recorded live.
Hey everybody, it's Out of Darkness into the Light, and I have Tom here tonight, and I think that he would probably fall within the general lines of what we would call a targeted individual, as I do myself. And I've seen Tom under the moniker Mr. 5 a number of times in Hoaxbuster chat room. I haven't seen him in a while. I've interacted with him. He probably doesn't remember me. I'm the guy that's always throwing around the conspiracy humor jokes. That's about all I ever do on Facebook, too. I don't hardly say anything serious on there at all, because I think Facebook is a joke. But I don't think that Hoaxbusters is a joke. Like I said before, that's my favorite podcast. So
yeah, it's the only one I listen to.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in there that I know, so it's a great place to hang out on Monday night. I kind of miss it when it's not there. I've been showing up regularly lately. I haven't seen you there in a while, though.
Oh man, no, I couldn't do it. I tried to make a run for the border, recently, and that costed me a little bit of time. And
What do you mean a run for the border? Are we taking you literally here?
Yeah. This time you take me literally. I went to Canada, but to leave the country again. But because I'm not welcome in America. I mean, they don't let me starve. They do let me have enough money to live. Basically.
Well, Tom, you talk about they. I mean, you believe there's people pursuing you, correct?
Oh, man, I don't know if I believe it. I mean, it's just a matter of perception right now. But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because you hear a lot of the words being thrown around like paranoid and all these other words. And, I got to wonder where people even get some of these terms because, if they're so vague, you don't really know where they're coming from when they say them. Because you look at some of the people they say are paranoid, and then you look at other, and the range is just so wide, and you don't want to be linked into that. I mean, if I'm pigeonholed, I would rather be pigeonholed a little bit more specifically than that. Because man, them people that they call paranoid, most of them are just, if they're, right in their assessment of these people, most of them are just like gun crazy killers, and and that's pretty much about the only time I hear the word paranoid is usually it's some guy that went all ballistic, and you know what I mean. And so when they bring the word paranoid into the chat or something, or oh, you're paranoid, you got to wonder what the heck are you talking about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I would never do anything like that. But they throw the word around, like it's nothing. And so just recently I went to Canada. But, and you see on TV the wave of immigrants that are headed out of their country for asylum, from these Syria and some of these other countries. And, that gets promoted on TV for whatever reason. Maybe it's because there's a lot of them or whatever the case is, or maybe, there's America has interest in their country, and that's why they're getting notoriety, because you don't really hear anything about me at all. And the media is always on top of what I'm doing. I mean, they're like, if I had to describe an entity that was just set up to monitor everybody in a country, besides the KGB, I would say it's the news media.
It's funny you said an entity that's set up to monitor everybody. Remember, I warned you about this show. On this show, we actually talk about a manufactured entity that's a biological computer. It's actually a sentient being that monitors everything. Welcome to Out of Darkness into the Light, man.
Oh, okay, great.
We're about as far out there as you can get.
Oh, well, it doesn't
even
hurt.
Farther.
Okay. Well,
are you a professing Christian or a Bible believer?
Well, for me, it was always a spiritual world. Ever since I was a kid, I never had any friends. My parents never talked to me really. Back then when I was growing up, kids were seen and not heard, and you just had to do your chores, eat your food, go to bed, and as long as you didn't get in their way, everything was cool. And so
let me ask you a question. Yeah, you seem to believe there's conspiracies revolving around you. Do you think your parents were in on the conspiracy?
I asked them, believe it or not, I asked my dad if he sold me. I said, did you sell me? Did you sell us children? I was kind of mostly focusing on me, but he said no. He said that's illegal. And my dad's a pretty straight shooter. I mean, you don't get much more square than him. I don't mention anything about conspiracy with him. We don't talk about the earth being flat. We don't talk about nothing. We talk about chess. We talk about the weather. We talk about health. But it's just one of those places I don't go with him.
Hey, Tom, you want to hear a really scary thought?
What's that?
How do you know for certain, with absolute certainty, that your parents are not Illuminati programmers? How would you know that for certain? Can you think of a way?
Yeah, well, in a way, you have to look at.
I'm talking about anybody's parents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, see, what I was typing in the chat in Hoaxbusters was that I believe some parents, people in general, are becoming more aware of the system, and that the system will reward you if you submit to it.
That's right. We call it a perks and punishment system.
Oh, okay. Perks and punishment. That's neat. And that's exactly what they do is they see opportunity. And believe me, man, if you're somebody who is in need of something and you're not given a whole lot of opportunity, a lot of times you'll take what you can get. And I think that's what they do is they take what they can get. And so they don't mind if their kids are brainwashed in the schools, and they don't mind because it's like, the old passing your children through the fire kind of comes to mind because of the Old Testament.
You talking about Moloch?
Is that what it is? Because I'm not real familiar with the Old Testament, but is that what I mean? Because there is something
about... Yeah, they used to offer their children to the god Moloch as a sacrifice.
Right. And I mean, except in this case, the children still live, but really, are they alive anymore? I mean, what you may as well say they are not what they would have been if you would have taken another route.
Yeah, well, their minds are compartmentalized from trauma-based mind control.
Indoctrinated type deal. And it's some mind-based trauma, but I don't think kids really recognize trauma too much until they're older. I mean,
that's true because children. That's a good point, Tom. Because children, it's like they're wired by God to believe that no matter how crazy their environment is, it's like normal. Like this is what happens with the children of alcoholics. They think their family's normal.
Right, and drug addicts. I've seen because some of the kids of these alcoholics and drug addicts, man, they seem like they're almost empowered by God to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you see these kids are really bright, and you think, wow, man, what is this kid who's really bright doing with these horrible parents? And sometimes I wonder, because a lot of times that seems to be the case, is that these kids are almost protected somehow.
Well, that's kind of interesting because under the right circumstances, stress can actually bring you to a higher level or induce intelligence. But if you get overwhelmed by it, it has the opposite effect.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think
this is why God brings suffering into our life, because what we need, in His opinion anyway, because He does this over and over again, He brings suffering, which is a form of stress, and then we perform at a higher level, even though we don't like it.
Or drug-induced stress.
Oh yeah. Well, there's all kinds of stress,
Right. Yeah. Because I know the drug-induced stuff seems to work. The college kids are taking attention deficit drugs now to help their test, and I think I mean, you got to be able to do that naturally too. But chemicals seem to work really well in being able to change people's focus, you know, or outlook.
So at what age did you start to get suspicious as you were being monitored?
Oh, that was way late, way late. I wish it was much sooner. I really do. Because here's the thing with being from a small city. Minnesota's kind of a small state still, even though it's on a map it looks big, and Minneapolis looks big.
I live up by Canada, not too far. I'm in western Washington.
Oh, okay. So you know what I mean.
A little bit south of Seattle. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's even though they look big, they're still relatively small, you know. And even especially back before we had a large immigrant population, we were a pretty small, tight knit community. Even as big as it got, it never really got that big because everybody knew everybody. And so growing up, when I hit about 18 years old, you know, I went to work at the hospital downtown, the county hospital.
Yeah, I did too. You know, I worked at a hospital.
Okay, and I was a pretty bright guy. I think I was.
Hospitals are crazy places to work at, man.
Oh, they're nuts, man. I'll tell you, you're right. You are right. And then, so when I was working there, I was thinking about ways to make, you know, I thought about knee surgery, and I look at some of the patients and some of the techniques they were using, and I would comment, you know, make my own, give them input on what I thought would be a shortcut or maybe a better way of doing it. And so I started, and I told them, you know, with these knee surgeries, I said, couldn't you just harvest the cartilage from the cadavers, you know, and use them in these people that are still alive, and, you know, give them back a new knee, you know, kind of type thing. And, you know, these are just ways, table talk, you know, I'm not educated in that. So with that being said, I left it alone, and I started going to church with one of the guys at work, you know, because it seems like church people are always proselytizing their religion, you know. They're always kind of looking for somebody that they can bring into the fold or something, you know. At least this guy was one of those.
Just real quick, Tom, you know, that happened to me just last night.
Okay.
And when I was at the store, and the guy he handed me a card. I had met him once before. But go ahead. I mean, it just happened to me last night.
Yeah. So then I went with him, and I started writing Bible studies of my own. And one of the Bible studies that I wrote was on the umbilical cord. And I thought, well, it's, you know, I mean, that's the kind of mind that I have, you know. It's just, it doesn't necessarily have any outside input. It's all, you know, from my own way of thinking. So I wrote in a paper on the umbilical cord, and I compared it to Jesus, and I said, this is how, you know, he's the vine, and the umbilical cord is the vine, and we're the fruit, and, you know, and I made a whole thing about the umbilical cord. Well, you know, as it turned out, the knee cartilage thing, they decided they were looking into that, and it wasn't such a bad idea after all, they were telling me. So they started listening to me a little bit closer. And when I wrote this paper on the umbilical cord, that's when they decided, well, let's take a look at the umbilical cord. And so because research department was right next door to the surgery, you know, it was outside, but it was right next door. And we had a lot of the people in research that worked in the hospital. You know, the research lab was part of their job, and a lot of times they were also using their creations in the operating room and that sort of thing. So you know, it wasn't a far stretch for them to do that. And it turned out not shortly after that's when they said they discovered the neutral stem cell, and they discovered it in the umbilical cord. And
so you think this was because of your contribution?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
I kind of suspected that.
Yeah, and then so that I thought, well, maybe I inspired it, even though that, you know, like I say now, they probably would have came along with it sooner or later. But at the time, I think that was an inspiration for them. And this also now, while I'm going to church type thing, I'm jumping around from place to live. So the guy that I went to church with, he thought I was trying to kill his cat. So he kicked me out, and he gave me an address.
Tom, do you think he was delusional?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course he was delusional. He had a really old, sickly cat. And I mean, this thing was ready. It was nasty. Just to look at, the hair was all falling out. It was as close to dead as you could get without it actually just falling over. And, so he thought that I was trying to kill his cat because I made a comment that said, that cat is really old and maybe it would be better if you just put it to sleep or whatever. I don't even know if I said put it to sleep, but I just said maybe you should, think about its health a little bit more. And I think he was worried that I was going to sneak off with it sometime and do it in. But I wouldn't do something like that, It was just a suggestion, and I was young, and I had never owned a cat of my own, so I don't know.
This guy sounds like he's crazy.
Well, he ended up staying at the hospital for a long time, and then he ran for public office. I don't know how that worked out, but so he gave me the address to this other guy to live with, this other Christian in Minneapolis, and I kind of was moving in between there, and then with this person that I met when I was a teenager. It was supposed to be a friend of the family who was still kind of hanging around me. He was just this kind of hang-around guy, and I didn't know it, man. I didn't think about it at the time, and Chris Kendall, it kind of says some things sometimes that makes me suspect that he is similar to this person in various ways. They have similarities.
Uh-oh.
He used to say la la.
Could it be a Chris Kendall conspiracy theory?
Yeah, well, Chris is out there. He's no dummy. And this guy was no dummy either. I think this guy was my handler. I think my stepdad, maybe consciously or unconsciously, introduced this guy to me.
Well, here's the thing, see, these handlers, they can have an embedded altar. They don't even, they're sincere. They don't know what they're doing either. Somebody's programming them.
Right. Well, in this case, I think he was, you got a good point about that, because there's a big confusion about why, if this guy is my handler, is he not doing better with his own life? He was always barely scraping by. And I thought, if somebody's hiring this guy to keep an eye on me, you'd think they'd be treating him a little bit better. But at the same time, they did seem to give him a wife. They gave him a job, and this is what I say they gave him. For some reason.
They will give you a wife, but it may not be for a good purpose. Go ahead.
Right. Well, he was the problem. Even you couldn't find a much worse person. Any woman that would take him would have to be very patient. And
right.
This woman she was very patient, because he started doing drugs, and he was addicted to, drugs, and she never left him, I don't think. At least from what they were still together when I ran into him at the store. So
if she's programmed herself, or she's assigned, she has to complete an assignment, she cannot leave him. Go ahead.
Well, she's not. I don't think she's assigned. I think she is just one of these homebodies.
Okay.
That, like the woman who always just likes to go and sit on the couch and.
Wants to have a husband to pay for everything?
Well, she was actually the breadwinner of the family. I think she made more than he did. So, but when she got home, she didn't have any friends at work. When she got home, she would just sit on the couch. She didn't have any friends. And he was her only friend, too, So when they met, he just moved right in. There was nothing stopping him from
That makes me highly suspicious, because a lot of times they will eliminate all contacts in order to gain greater control over the person.
Well, she's, and I don't want to sound racist, man. I don't want to get into that. But she was a mulatto. I think she was a little bit white. And
you know what's weird? I'm going to tell you something, Tom. This is weird. On this show, we have all these synchronicities, and sometimes we don't talk about them. But
Right.
that is a word that probably hardly anybody in the audience would know. Somewhat curiously, I came across that word today on Wikipedia through another link. Actually, I was looking at how they used to have these shows where they would impersonate black people. This is really popular. Oh, they're called minstrel shows. You can Google it. I mean, this is a forgotten culture. They kind of used to make fun of black people, and it was culturally acceptable in the mid 19th century.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I can't even remember the name of what you just said, but that is a person. I remember that they either have one parent that's black and the other one's white, or they have two parents that are mixed.
Right. And
go ahead.
And so she was, and like I was telling you in the other chat room, is that I do consider myself the highest Christian.
Uh-huh.
There's no other Christian higher than me, and and I stand by that.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that.
Oh yeah. So these things when I'm coming up with or I'm saying things that are relevant to you, even recently or something that I wouldn't know about you, that I do that all the time with people. And it's one of the ways that they know that I'm this person that is spiritual and I'm not, a phony like the ones who just say they're Christian and talk about things and they don't actually do any signs and wonders in that. So that's one of the things that definitely keeps me above the rest too, even though that's why one of the reasons I think that they've been trying to harm me, physically is to where maybe they will hurt my body enough to where I won't be able to do that anymore. And then I will just be this person who has a case against them for human rights abuses, but I still won't be able to overcome the physical effects of the abuse, and therefore their job will be complete in my destruction, whereas if I stay healthy, if I keep my power, so to speak, then they are more fearful of my ability to overcome. If I get justice in this world, if I go to a Supreme Court, somehow, somebody gets me in front of a judge where I can display my evidence and everything and prove my case, they're done. They know that. Oh, I got it. It's open and shut.
Do you think you can overthrow the Illuminati, Tom?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think
you think that's why they're scared of you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Every day they make sure that they let me know that they are not going to stop doing what they're doing to me every day. There isn't a day that goes by. I can turn on almost any television network and show you something that they've put in their broadcast or they've put in their commercial to show me that they're part of the larger group that as a whole makes sure that I don't go anywhere in this world.
Now, they're sending secret messages to you, aren't they?
Well, I don't know if they're sending it, like you say, the hearing the voice type thing. I don't know if they do. I don't know if they do that, but I mean, it's a clandestine form of communication. Everybody, I would imagine every targeted individual probably has their own, their own wavelength or form of communication that you're able to access with their recognition, with their ability to recognize it as such. And they know my Bible study had certain numbers on it, okay, that I made my own copyright on my Bible study, the one with the umbilical cord, all of them. And those numbers, and they use those numbers all the time. That is one of their big things. First, they used words out of the Bible study early on, like good stuff, or, because I wrote a whole thing on good stuff was the title of it. So they would say, oh, here's some good stuff. Or they would, use like stop the insanity, and that would be one of the phrases on my Bible study was like, stop the insanity or something to that effect. And so they would come out, and what they will do is they will take what I have written or take what I have done, and they will turn it into a profitable situation for themselves and then mock me with it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this was your idea, but we made all the money off it, and you get nothing. Ha ha. And
well, we know for
right.
a fact that they're doing that with Hollywood's scripts in Hollywood. They're stealing all these scripts from people that submit them, and they make movies out of them, and they get no credit. But we're talking basically about what they were doing with Tesla, right? You know who Nikola Tesla is, right?
Yeah. I didn't know much about the guy. I know he was an electrical genius, and I know that he was very confident. He seemed like a very confident person. But as far as what he actually did, I can't say, because I wasn't there, and it's hard for me to even go back and read history or documents from the past without being skeptical, because, that is what you have to do. If you're going to gain respect in this world, you can't even believe things that are almost accepted as common knowledge.
Hey, before we go on, Tom, is there some profound reason why you refer to yourself as Mr. 5?
Oh, yeah. You didn't, okay, I'll tell you that story. There was early on, this was coming back to the years when I worked at Hennepin County, because they noticed me. I think after those Bible studies and after the discovery of this neutral stem
They noticed
cell,
you were a gifted individual, right?
I think so. They're like the Shining type thing,
Uh-huh.
And so what ended up, and with Jeff, I said his name. Okay. Anyway, the guy that was my handler type, he was making friends with a lot of these people, and they would access him if they wanted to access me. And so he was like the point man to get to me. So that guy would, he would go with me wherever I went. If we went to the bar, he would come with. If we went to a party, he would come with. And he was, if I was invited to a party from work, he would come with. So he knew a lot of the people that I was hanging around with back then. And then the radio station, one of the local radio stations, was we were partying one night, and I was just joking, and I pulled the lid off this light bulb, and I just, it's always sunny, and it's always sunny, and there was more to it, but I don't want to give you the call letters of the radio station that used to use that phrase, and so that was one of them that they were starting to, on that radio station, they were starting to, what I noticed was to play music, like to play songs that were relevant to what I either did the night before, or, you know what I mean, or was going to do that next day or the weekend or something. And
so you had your own predictive programming, huh?
Right. I had it all. This
was all because you were so gifted.
I kind of think so. And I think they knew it a lot longer before that. I think they were waiting for me to get to that point. I think they knew when I was a child that I was smart, and they were waiting for me to come into my own, so to speak, and see what they could get out of me. Because
real quick, Tom, what we believe around here is that each person has a unique electromagnetic signature, because we believe that we're electrical beings. Let me talk for just a little bit, because I want to say something about the umbilical cord, too. And that they can actually monitor that, obviously. We've talked about Kirlian photography over and over and over again, even though most Christians aren't familiar with it. But there's some singular uniqueness in children that are going to grow up to be very important. And I believe they can identify this even from a distance, and they monitor these people through their whole life. So we believe in that kind of thing. I want to say something about the umbilical cord. Based on that theoretical model, which is basically the electrical universe, everything has electrical properties. As we say around here, everything is frequency. There's this phenomena that mothers are able to know the precise moment when their children die. It could be, World War I or something like that. This kind of thing is documented, and I actually believe that there's an etheric umbilical cord that is unbroken, that connects the child and the mother through the entire life. And when they lose that, because of the superior intuitional abilities of the female,
Right.
they can know at least the approximate time, and this has been proven over and over. That's just my theory, that they actually have an etheric umbilical cord. You like that?
Oh, that's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a theory, but it's an interesting one.
Uh-huh.
And
I can't prove it,
Right, and that's the thing. With most things, you have to prove them, or they don't get you very far. And the thing with the school, when I was in elementary school, they never educated me past the 4th grade. That was the last year that I really, really felt like they.
Well, how come?
I believe that this gets into a broader. This is where you.
When you say who are you talking about, though?
Well, okay, I think.
I mean, most cases that would be your parents, right? You said they weren't involved with the conspiracy, though.
Yeah, my parents were never involved in any of our kids' education. My mother she worked, and she was just a woman that cooked dinner, and she left everything to the school system. My mother relied on the system to take care of. She turned us over to the school, and she expected the school to do what they were supposed to do, so that she didn't have to. So that's kind of how my mother was.
Mm-hmm.
She was, she just took it for granted that we were being educated, and I believe that. I don't think my mom was a very wicked woman at all. I think she was a very nice woman that just was easily relieved of her duties if she felt strongly enough that somebody was going to do that for her. So in that case, I think that she really relied on the school, and I think my stepdad was the same way. I think he also was really relying that the school was going to educate us, but at the same time, the neighborhood was changing. We were getting a lot more people, an influx of blacks that were being oppressed in the South, and so they were moving up north, and they were helping them get away from, persecution and whatnot from the southern states.
Uh-huh.
And so they accommodated them in our area, and so they were tearing down schools and building bigger ones. And at that time, that's when I started to get lost in the shuffle, because they tore down our school, but they didn't have another one for us built yet. So they moved us to another school. And then that school was too full, or something happened where they changed the zone or whatever, and then I had to go to a different one. And then the school that they were working on finally opened, and it was an experimental school, and the experiment was awful in my opinion. They had rooms that had no walls on them, so you could see everybody that was walking around in the entire school, pretty much, while you were trying to do your work. So there were nothing but distractions constantly. And so I think 4th grade was about the last year that they really educated me. From then, my family moved from Minneapolis to Rosemount to Robbinsdale to, I forget the name of the other city, and then we moved to Apple Valley. And by then, they refused to educate me at all. When we got to high school in Apple Valley, they were never going to educate me. They made it very clear when I first walked in the door, because I had long hair. My mom was nice enough to let me grow my hair shoulder length, but it was very bushy. And so moving to this town where they were all very conservative, that was absolutely the worst thing that could have happened, because they were very, tight knit and straight cut, and beer was the only thing they drank, beer and liquor. There was no hard drugs, and I was one of those people that at that time I knew about other things, you know,
Hey,
weed.
Tom,
Yeah.
you ever see these horror films where everybody in the town is in on it?
Yeah, I think it was the Wicker Man was one,
Yep.
and I think that might have been one of the only ones that I've seen where everyone in the town was in on it.
I've seen a few, but I can't remember the title. We actually had a lady here in the past who believed, and this is not like a joke or something like that, okay?
Right.
That, well, she believed that she was, the Illuminati, you know, in their opinion, thought that she was so important that they basically manufactured a whole school. Well, she was schooled where everybody there was apparently a Satanist.
Right.
But she didn't figure this out until, I don't know, like 20 years later.
Yeah, it's hard to
I mean, she talked to me about this in detail. I mean, people would think this is completely crazy. But she was very convincing because she had all this information. It was basically based on her testimony. I'm not trying to say that they built the school, but the pastor and his wife, I mean, I would say they were definitely Satanists. Oh, I mean, there's no question. And I think they were sending Satanists there. I don't know if they were all Satanists when she first got there, but I mean, there's a good chance that not everybody was. But I mean, it appeared as if they were. Because everybody was acting strangely, you know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah.
Like I told you before the show, I mean, I've you can throw anything at me, man.
Right.
You know?
And I think that in this case, you know, when I went to these churches, you know, even the church that the guy.
I think about 1 in every 5 pastors in America is a Satanist. By the way, go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of the churches that I went to. It was a very prominent church, you know. I mean, they're well known, and I think
all the mega churches are controlled, and they're all Satanists.
Yeah,
That's what I believe.
Yeah,
I've said on the show. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. I don't know if I would call them Satanists, but you know, because I don't really know exactly all that entails, but I can tell you that that they definitely hold to their doctrine. Whether it's right or wrong, they don't question it. Whoever is at the top of their church or whoever sets the mandate and that sort of thing is technically who they kind of all follow, and they don't stray from that. A lot of these churches are like franchises.
Well, the word we use is cultic, like a cult. They have a cultic mindset. They just kind of follow along, you know.
Okay. The franchise idea is more for me where they agree by the terms and conditions of the what's the word? The company.
Mm-hmm.
What it is.
Well, they're actually a corporation.
Corporation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And so they agree to the terms of the corporation, and then they are able to set up shop, and they cannot veer away from those terms. So they lose all their own opinion of anything. They don't allow themselves to have the opinion. They don't allow themselves the freedom of thought. They just stick to this set guideline.
It sounds like you're describing people on mind control.
Well, you know, you don't really call them mind control because they're just afraid of suffering. You know what I mean? They know that if they don't do this, that life can get a lot harder. And I think that, you know, if you want that beautiful wife, you know, and you want that beautiful car, you know, a shout out to the talking heads, but you know, if you want that, you have to do what they want you to do to get it.
You have to perform.
Right, and that's the price. The wages of sin is death, you know, and that's one of the things that they have to pay, is they have to die to who they are. They have to die to any aspirations that they might have had to be something else, and then they're qualified. So when I went to this church, they did not see eye to eye with me at all right away. And not only that, the church across the street, the Baptist church, when I just went in there and I saw the pastor one day. I was kind of down in the dumps or whatever, and I thought, well, I'll just go talk to this guy. He's my neighbor, And so I went into his church and I says, and he says, well, what have you ever done that's so bad in your life? And I said, well, I might have lied, because I really haven't done that much bad. And that was it. I'm telling you, man, this guy took that little bit of information and he gave it to every horrible person that would use it against me that you could have thunk. And next thing you know, he's selling his church. Okay, somebody came in and bought his old junky church for a lot of money, and he built a brand new one out in the suburbs within
not good.
year. Oh, I know.
It sounds like there was somebody behind him. That's what Satanists do.
Yeah, there's definitely, and that was a Baptist. So all the religions are pretty much corrupt. Not, they're corrupt in a way, I think.
That's what we say on the show. We say they're corrupt.
Okay, they're definitely.
You're on the right show, Tom.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I talked to you.
I'm a Christian who talks about how Christians are corrupt.
Oh, okay. Well, I know you were on one time, and you kind of were scaring me off a little bit because you were kind of really going, almost to betrayal mode, like where you to Judas mode, it felt like here this guy is, he's just an opportunist and he's just a betrayer. And that's the way, even if you used everything I said today against me somehow, I have to completely be comfortable with that. And that's the attitude that I'm taking now. That's why I'm not.
We were upfront with you, Tom. Most people are not going to take you seriously, and they're going to think this is an obscure form of comedy.
Oh, good.
Because Dave has a sense of humor. That's what they're going to think.
Fantastic.
Now, how they could possibly come up with that theory, I don't know, but that's what they're probably going to think.
That's okay, because I enjoy comedy. I think of jokes, and so I should have wrote them down all my life. One of the things I almost am sure that I came up with that those titties aren't retarded joke that Dave Attell used, and a lot of these comedians stole my material over the years. You wouldn't believe it.
I was just going to ask you if the Illuminati has stolen any of your comedy material.
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go, right there. They'll do that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
they'll take you for everything you got, Tom.
Well, everybody is essentially a little opportunity for somebody who is in a position to make happen whatever they see. If they see somebody who's like, look at these old country western singers or these folk singers. They go into somebody's community, they live with them for a couple weeks, they steal their identity, they write a song like they were the guy doing it their whole life, and they get rich. And these guys.
What you're saying is actually true. People will think we're joking, but that's true. Oh
yeah, that's fine with me. I enjoy comedy. I love it. I think if anybody can get a laugh, man, get a laugh.
I've actually said on the show, Tom, that the country music industry is more controlled than anything out there. Any music genre, that would surprise people. There's a lot of handlers,
right?
And mind-controlled slaves in there. It's just completely off the charts.
Yeah. Well, that was the only music for a long time, especially where I was at. There was country. There were two kinds of music: country and western, and that was all the joke. There was two kinds of music: country and western, and if until AM radio, was some of these radio stations that were starting to play rock and roll. That was the only real music you even heard. My mom listened to country almost her whole entire life. I think she still does. And my stepdad, he listened to a little bit more what would be considered I don't know, would you call it soul music with the Motown,
like Aretha Franklin?
Yeah, definitely that sort of thing. So,
or Jim Brown?
Yeah,
Jim Brown. Jim Brown was a running back for the Cleveland Browns there, Dave.
Yeah, James Brown.
James Brown. Well, actually, his name is Jim, but they call him
yeah.
James, so I was close.
And so what ended up happening, and I can't close my Skype right now. You'd be freaking out because I've tried to close Skype like a dozen times now, and it will not shut. So for the most part,
You think there's a conspiracy behind that?
well, no, I just think it's weird that Windows 10, it seems to be so finicky all the time with this stuff.
Well, when people call in on our show, all kinds of strange things happen, and then we talk about it, and we do think it's a conspiracy. So what do you think about that?
You could. Yeah, I always have to leave those types of conspiracies alone because they're too small to mess with. It's something that's significant enough to where I don't. If I can't change it, I have to let it go because it'll just eat me up. There's so many things in this world that I can change that I know are against me purposefully and directly that I can focus on other than these little things like that. But they are sometimes significant. They're just not any real threat. There's not much I can do about it. But like you said, so these guys would steal identities, and that if they have the opportunity, they will look at you like when I was doing martial arts with my handler. I'm going to call him my handler. And I would come home and I was able to afford it, and he wasn't. So what I did was I told him, hey, I'll go take the classes. I'll come home and I'll show you what they showed me, and maybe we can both learn together, and it won't cost so much money. So I said, okay. He says, well, I don't want to get hurt. I said, well, I'll go slow. We'll be like Ninja Turtles is what I told him. I said, we'll be Ninja Turtles. And this was back in like 1985. That was before Ninja Turtles came out. And
they stole something else from you there.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, if I could prove it, and I'm not going to say that's a for sure thing, because, he had, it was so very close to that time where I can't put my finger on exactly when it was, but it was very close. But for the most part, I'm convinced that Ninja Turtles was my idea. But they stole millions and billions of dollars worth of ideas from me. They never let me get an education purposefully, and I think this was their plan, in my opinion. From what I see, is that they didn't educate me because I was an intelligent child. They decided to try to direct me in other ways, and whatever way that that they thought was going to profit them the most was going to be the way that they wanted me to go. And I think religion was one of them. But since I conquered religion immediately. I mean immediately. I was done with it. Not only when I decided to become a Christian, that was pretty much when God just gave me the reins. He gave them to me, but I didn't put any of him on. He gave me the anointing or whatever, but it was never something that I was going to acknowledge until I felt like I was ready. So I knew that I was going to be this guy, but at the same time, I knew that I had to stay a normal person. Because if I started going into the Bible things, and if I started doing all these things before I felt like I was ready, then it was going to not be as good as it could have been. So I waited. I just did. I partied. I drank with people. I smoked cigarettes for a little while, which I wish I'd have never done. Those are so hard. But I did everything normal people do. And but still as an honest person, I wasn't feeling like I was doing the Christian thing, but I also didn't feel like I was in any way, harming the Christian thing. So for me, I said, well, I'm going to be normal, and that's what I did. I made a lot of friends, man. I was a popular person, but these people who were who are very jealous, by the way. The people in power are very, very jealous. And if you get too much popularity, they start to get scared. They start to think, hey, man, if this guy goes, I don't want to use that term, but if he gets very popular, it could be bad for us. So they decided it was time for me to not be popular. And so they found people that would say I was a bad person, that maybe knew me in high school, and maybe I was mean to them one time, or not even mean to them. Maybe they just lied about me being mean to them, and that they would use that as ammunition and justification to persecute me. Because you can believe me, it wasn't a paranoid thing that they were playing these songs in a row to tell little stories to either threaten me or to, maybe describe what I had done the day before or
Where did
anything
they
like
play the songs in a row? On the radio?
Oh,
Local
yeah.
radio? Okay.
Yeah. Most of the songs on the radio were played in a row, and they were specific to, like maybe one would have my name in it. My last name is a very used word. It's also a word. It's not just a name,
Mm-hmm.
And so there is definitely a couple songs with that word as the main character in the song. So that was also great ammunition for these people. They didn't have to go out and make songs to use against me. They, and you can probably relate to this, they almost scientifically cover almost every subject under the sun so that they could have a song about it if they ever need to use it for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do. They have a library of music.
So they get all the songs. They're all ready to go, huh?
Yeah, they're all ready to go. If you got, like, say, something is, oh man, what is a good example of something you're doing? Well, let's take where I got the name from. You asked me that earlier, and we got off the track, but we're still on the track. We're just hitting these subjects.
We always get off track on this show. Everybody knows that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because this is the first time for me discussing this with anybody. So for me, when you want to talk about schizophrenia, that to me is the definition of schizophrenia, is when you can't tell the story like somebody knows how to write a book. They didn't educate me to know how to write a book, to where the subject goes and where the action goes and where the ending goes. And there's places for those things in books. So to me, schizophrenia is putting those in different orders, like putting the ending first and then the subject in the middle and then the action at the end. So that's my definition of schizophrenia. And that's sometimes where I end up going, but it's really not schizophrenia. It's just a lack of structure. And so for me, I'll go back to the Mr. 5 thing, is there was a song by Soundgarden. See, I was so popular that even musicians and everybody, they all know who I am today. They know who I was then. All the big boys and girls know me. I typed that in to Hopes Busters chat. I said, all the big boys and girls know me. So when Soundgarden came out with a song called, I think it was called Mystified.
Mm-hmm. That
was the song that I thought I heard him say Mr. 5, because that's what my number was, 5.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And on my Bible study, that was the first number of my copyright, and I call myself Mr. 5 today. And that's an old that goes back a long way.
I see. You think your number is number 5?
Well, I think that's the number that I picked because when I was a kid, we went to the fair, and me and this other handler, I never had friends. I had handlers. I had people who, and to call them handlers is a stretch because these are rich people's kids a lot of times. They're not necessarily rich people's kids, but they're from good stock.
That's true. That's right. I also, just real quick, I've had a lady on here before that believed that every single boyfriend she ever had, well, this is the same one I mentioned before. She realized this later, but they were all sent to her. They were Illuminati, every one of them. And that's how they get you, that's how they influence and control you.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, through your emotions, you know, that's a great way to do it, you know. Go ahead.
Well, in this case, my handler was, in that case, it was a kid that we moved in next door to, and this is where I was wondering if my stepdad might have had some sort of hand in what was going on, because he grew up pretty tough. He was a tough guy. He was in prison, and he had no education, you know, and but he was, you know, a solid guy. And but when we moved out into that area, well, I had already been doing drugs since I was pretty much around 10 years old. And we had moved out to this other area, and this guy who was, like I say, of good stock, you know, family-wise, right away started smoking weed with me before school. I mean, I was in 8th grade. And I mean, you know, and I was already experienced with drugs before I met him. So these people, you know, at a young age, they started to get me to do these things, which, you know, they didn't seem to let it get out of hand. You know, I wasn't a drug addict, but it was like they were seeing. They were just, I think I was a study in, you know, I guess a social study, or what's the word that I'm looking for, you know, where they study people.
On here, on this show, we call them an interesting lab rat.
Interesting lab rat, okay.
Well, that's what I claim to be, because I think the Illuminati is monitoring me.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm interested.
Well, we'll have to talk about you, too, because I don't want this to be a one-sided conversation.
Well, I think that they have a program for everyone, and I think mine broke down. They're trying to figure out what went wrong.
Oh, good. Well, you know, that's the whole theme.
That can make you interesting, you know.
Yeah, and that's the whole theme of the Matrix. I think.
Well, I actually talk about this. This is a good way to stay alive. You got to be an interesting lab rat, or otherwise they might knock you off. Go ahead.
Right. Well, you know, or a profitable one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the other thing. Yeah. Well, you know, you fill a void. You know, a guy like you do something that very few other people will do, and so you fill that void for them. So you're probably profitable just being the way you are right now, having your show, because who else is going to do it? Right. Chris Kendall don't handle this sort of subject matter. Alex Jones don't handle this sort of subject matter. You know, I mean, the people, there's very few people out there that handle this type of a subject. So I think you'll be okay. I don't think they're going to bother you that much. You know, I think you're probably being used a little bit, but at the same time, you're, you know, I think whatever you wanted to do, you're probably free to do it. I don't think you know what I mean? I think you have favor with them.
I think one advantage that I have is they're convinced that the rest of society won't take me seriously.
Okay.
I'm too extreme. Too extreme.
Well, you know, you have a lot of theory, and I think that is always, you know, that's always a, you know, neutralizing ingredient.
Uh-huh.
You know, for any subject matter, whenever you start to theorize or hypothetical or what word is that? Hypothesize?
Hypothesize, yeah.
Hypothesize, okay. Whenever you try to hypothesize or theorize, I think they absolutely, you've absolutely turned into a
Somebody is less dangerous?
Yeah, less dangerous. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think that might be the case with you. I think that they know that most of what they do goes without, they don't leave scars on their body typically. The people that they hurt, they don't usually leave evidence. And so they're in the clear pretty much with a guy like you. And you know, not a guy like you, that sounds generic. I didn't mean that. I apologize. But with somebody that does what you do, I don't think they really consider that in any way a problem for them. Mm-hmm. Because of they could just always look at something you've done before that may have been, you know, outlandish for whatever, for lack of a better term, and then they can just say, well, look at this, you know, this guy has, you know, had this idea and that idea, and it's going to be, you know, cannon fodder for them, you know. Here's the song, by the way. Can you hear it a little bit?
Say it again. I can hear some of the background.
Yeah, can you hear the song?
Yeah, what is that?
That's Outshine by Soundgarden.
Oh.
It says, feeling Minnesota. Look in California and feeling Minnesota. That's where I'm from, Minnesota.
Okay. You like that group, huh?
Well, no, that's just where I got the song, the name Mr. Five. Because I know that I'm...
Do you think they have secret coded messages in Soundgarden's music?
Well, I was Mr. Five, and when they said Minnesota, they put Minnesota and the number 5 together. And I'm not too sure what this guy is doing, hanging in these chains and stuff. I don't know what that is all about. But he's climbing this chain ladder, and it looks like he gets stuck in it or something. This is the official video. And sometimes they'll put things in the official video that you should probably pay attention to. Go ahead.
Well, I just talked about recently, I put it in a podcast title, that David Bowie's entire career has to have been impersonate and mock somebody that's very important that the Illuminati knows about, but nobody else, or hardly anybody else does.
Right. And that could
kind of thing.
Because they got the secrets, they got the inside knowledge. When, you know, the whole Beatles thing with Paul McCartney being killed in 1966 and whether he was switched, I mean, they made a whole big thing of that. And they worshipped Aleister Crowley. Now, they didn't say they worshipped Aleister Crowley, but they put him on the Sgt. Pepper theme club album. Uh-huh. And he was quoted, I guess, as saying that the child that you want, the best child sacrifice, is the European white male of higher than average intellect and around 8 years old.
And John Lennon, he had the number 9 literally following him his entire life. It even started off, now this is supposedly, because I'm a little skeptical, with his address and stuff like that, which that's going to create some very interesting theories that I actually think there's more than one John Lennon, too, because if you're important enough, they're always going to have doubles for any major historical figures, but it's possible that they were all over him from the very beginning. If that's true, then he was probably one of these, what I call a bastard child, you know, as far as their bloodline. These are the kind of people that they got a partial Illuminati bloodline, they got significant bloodline, blood, but they move them up in the pop industry and, you know, like on, you know, television, and they can be, you know, high fashion models too.
Right. Well, you want to know some of the lyrics in this song?
Sure.
That make it a little more interesting?
Just real quick, you know, Soundgarden is a popular band up here from, you know, the grunge genre. And I'm not sure if it's a Seattle band, but it's I think it is Seattle. Yeah, it is a Seattle band. And I'm looking at Wikipedia. Yeah, that's up where I live, you know. So.
Oh, really? Okay, that's great. Yeah. And then so you know, and that's where the big coffee house boom started, isn't it?
Yeah, Starbucks. Starbucks, as we've mentioned before, I think probably only one time, but They've got some very elaborate, I say elaborate because they keep changing it, symbology that actually has to do with the ancient Sumerian queen Semiramis, or Isis, somewhat interestingly.
Okay.
Or, Ishtar. That's where you got that star on there. I just thought I'd throw it in there. But, yeah, that's what's up with them, man. I mean, they got esoteric stuff, too, They're sending out messages, man. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the lyrics, some of them.
Uh-huh.
The ones that I think are kind of pertinent to me was...
They've got an interesting song, by the way, real quick, called Black Hole Sun.
Black Hole Sun, I know it well.
We've talked about the Black Sun on here, so something's going on with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know that song pretty good, too. And that was my era, too, is the 90s was my era, kind of. And so, show me the power, child. I'd like to say that, I'm down on my knees today. It gives me the butterflies, gives me away till I'm up on my feet again. I'm feeling outshined. And that's one of the things that I was considered, man. I always considered myself shining, always.
Mm-hmm.
And not by name or not by movie or anything, but, the same with The Golden Child, the movie The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. And I knew that was years later. I knew that was more relevant. What they'll do is they kind of put, I don't know their religion, and I don't want to degrade anybody's religion, but when it comes to like Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion and things, as many different variations that they have, they don't ever seem to really have a stable society. So I don't want to denigrate that, but in the movie they had the Golden Child as a Tibetan monk, I think it was. And
yeah, I've not seen the movie, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, in the movie, he was a Tibetan monk, and they kept him in a cage, and they had to put evil, or what would be considered evil or unholy or whatever sacrilegious around the cage, so that his power was going to be neutralized by those, and that's how they kept him in his cage. And that's how they kept him in the cage.
That's
if they moved it, yeah, well, it was a deal. I don't recommend movies, but I haven't seen that one in a long time. And the reason I don't watch usually a movie a second time, many years later, is either I purposely didn't watch the whole thing to begin with, or if I do watch it, sometimes I'm more able to see it the second time, to see what I wasn't focusing on the first time.
Oh, I know what you mean by that, yeah.
Yeah, and so
I've
that
watched
was
movies that had esoteric messages in them, and the first time around I saw absolutely nothing, and I've watched them again and go, oh my God, this stuff is everywhere. I mean, this is true.
Right.
Yeah, because I didn't see it. I actually didn't have the ability to see it because I didn't have a clue what was going on. I came back years later and I saw stuff all over the place. Go ahead.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, no, you go ahead. You seem like a pretty interesting guy. I mean, what happened? Because Seattle was one of the areas that was.
What we believe is that there's this king and queen of Israel. You can listen to the shows we talk about them quite a bit. That's coming. And the Illuminati know that they're coming, and they're cranking out one movie after another about this couple. And since nobody knows about it, they're kind of getting away with it. And it's absolutely amazing. But there's been some movies where I just didn't think that was going on. It never occurred to me. And I went back. Actually, people talked about the movie in detail, you see. And then I went back to it, and I just go, oh, geez, man, this stuff's all over the place. What the heck was I smoking that night,
Well, what was the title? Do you know?
Let me see. I'm trying to think of one movie in particular.
You mean multiple movies?
Oh, yeah. I can't think of any right now. I may be able to think of some as we go along.
Okay,
but
I know.
There's a lady that has gone into great detail about this one movie, and I didn't see anything. But after she talked about it, I realized that there was all kind of stuff in there,
Yeah, Top Gun was one.
You got to have that mindset where you're looking for it. If you don't have that,
Yeah.
a lot of times you won't see anything, you know.
Right. Right. Or you'll see it, but it'll go into your subconscious, and you'll have to become more of a, enlightened person to bring it back up again.
Uh-huh.
And that's where most everything goes into your subconscious. I think most everything, all truth is visible, but unless you're able to process it, with your mind or your spirit or something, you're not going to necessarily always see it. And
that's
I think
a word that we use a lot around here. Process it. You have to get to the point where you can process the information that's set in your lap, and most people can't do it. What we talk about is the language of symbolism, which is something you have to learn just like a regular language, but it has to do with symbolism. If you don't understand that quote-unquote language, you're going to see little or nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly what they want.
Your subconscious will see it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We talk about that. Your subconscious will understand it, but your conscious mind can be affected on an emotional level because it doesn't understand anything. It can actually induce anxiety and fear.
And that's what distractions are. That's what they're for. That's what TV's for. I think that's what the media and public relations and governments and everything all know, and they all use that, as a big control mechanism, and then anybody goes in there and tries to enlighten these people, man, they're the ones that get in trouble. Those are the ones that the prophets and the saints and, and the people who, may have not even been religious but did that same thing are the ones who usually get in trouble. Those are the ones, man. And I was one of those people, you just can't, you have to tread light on old toes, and that's one of the things that you learn. For most of the years over the last, I'm getting pretty old now, but probably for at least 15 years of my life, I stayed out of controversial situations just as a form of humility, and not that I couldn't have been a lion or a tiger or something at any time. I could have just went full force into whatever I wanted to do, but I think that knowing that there were people that were better off if I was safe.
Did you know that tiger and lion are terms that they used in mind control programming?
No, I didn't.
Well, I met a girl, and for the first time, I started dialoguing with her, and she started saying the word tiger, like in a sexual context.
Okay.
And I recognized right away that she had been involved with MK Ultra programming. This is what's called beta programming.
Right.
And that she was basically what they call them they call them sex kittens. And then later, she actually came to awareness that this had happened to her, although she had some degree of awareness before that, but she wasn't fully acknowledging it. But yeah,
okay.
She was throwing around that term like a tiger in the same context that you used it. But when she did it, she didn't do it intentionally. It was just coming out of her. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So now,
do you believe it? Do you believe that you've been programmed? I mean, what we say on this show? We say everybody's programmed. To what degree of programming you're talking about? You know what I mean? You believe that they've programmed you to some degree, right?
Well, I don't know for sure. I can't.
Okay. Well, they're trying to program you.
I was strong enough to not program.
Okay.
But it fascinated me. This movie that I seen one time it's never left my consciousness. I always remembered it. Mm-hmm. There was a sheriff, a guy, and this is all I can remember. I don't even know the name of the movie, and I still, to this day, I would like to find it, but I don't know how to do it. But the guy was going to take a new job in his town, and so he goes and he sees an accident, and he's a policeman. He offers some assistance, looks at the people and makes sure, they don't need his help or whatever. And he goes along his way, and then he's working in his town, and he sees something else strange, And one day he goes to the store. I remember this. He goes into the market. I think it was like a drugstore or something. And he sees the person working there, and he doesn't remember where he's seen him from right away. And he's thinking, and it dawns on him that it was the guy who was dead on the side of the road before he came to town. And then so he starts piecing it all together, that he investigates all these other suspicious deaths in the town because he's a sheriff, and he starts seeing these people everywhere that were registered as dead, and the whole thing, and then he figured out that the doctor in the town, or this kind of doctor figure, was doing it. So he went to confront the guy. Isn't that weird?
We say on the show that a lot of doctors, dentists, lawyers, judges, I mean, they're generational Satanists. They're put in those positions, just like actors and pop music singers.
Well, in the end, when he confronted the guy, he went into his house and he said, "Look, man, I'm under arrest here, whatever." And and the doctor said, "Well, you might want to take a look at this." And he flipped the switch, and a movie starts playing, and it's his wife in bed with some guy, and she stabs him and rolls him over, and it's him. He's one of them too. And it just was like that movie always stuck in my head. I don't dwell on it or anything, but I thought, what a strange movie. And so I think, sometimes to be programmed, that movie kind of made it look like you couldn't be programmed, or you could be programmed and not know it. But I think I would know it. I think I really would. I think that my relationship with God and my relationship with myself is so consistent and has been so consistent throughout my entire life that I think I would be able to spot it, like somebody who's very picky, about where everything is in their house or something, or wherever they put something, they want it to be there. And I think that's how I've kind of lived my life, is everything is where I want it. And it doesn't seem like it's out of place to me at all.
Do you know what OCD is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's can you help me out with those?
Obsessive compulsive disorder.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. OCD.
A lot of people that have been abused have that. And there's lots of different types of abuse, because as a children, their lives were out of control, and because they were children, they couldn't do anything about it, and so they did the only thing that they could do, is they tried to create order in their immediate environment.
Okay.
That was the only control that they had, in order to create some degree of sanity. You know what I mean?
Okay. I definitely know that. I know sanity.
I just remembered one of the movies. It's a recent movie in 2011. It's called Cabin in the Woods. When I first saw that, I didn't see anything. And then I heard some people discussing it along these movies that I mentioned before, where they're putting people in there that represent someone. That's basically what they're doing. They represent somebody else.
Archetypes. Or,
you would never really. I've heard very few people talk about this kind of thing. So there's not very many people that are into it, but they're doing it over and over again. They keep representing the same people, like a woman with red hair, and there's a reason why they're giving her red hair, but people are simply not getting it.
Right.
And when I watched it again, there was no question that was going on. I was just going, what the heck was I thinking? Because I saw nothing. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you seem like you got your act together pretty well. I don't. If anything, I humble myself a little bit to be talking to you, because you seem so well presented.
Well, I've been doing this kind of thing since 2011. I was not as well presented back then. I got better.
Okay. Well, you sure sound good now. And it's nice to be able to talk to somebody too, because for me, being who I am, they don't let me have social contacts. One of the first things
how do they prevent you from having social contact? We're talking about the controllers. That's what I call them.
Right. they
How do they do that?
they threaten the people that you're communicating with through you. They show you. They use the same scenarios for the people that they don't want you to be around as they do for you. So if they're threatening you through, their clandestine communication or whatever they do, they can also put your associates, I won't say friends, but I would say associates, in that situation, in the place that you would normally be, in the threat. Usually the threat is against me, and I understand that this is what the deal is. But if I have friends, they can take a archetype, of that person, facsimile, or, gosh, man, I wish I knew words better. But anyway, somebody that represents that person, and they can threaten that person in that scenario, letting you know that if you want something bad to happen, maybe to this guy or girl, you might just want to not be hanging around them if you don't, So you kind of get that, and when you go over there and they say, oh, something weird happened to me today. Somebody was walking by me with a camera taking my picture. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's, it's kind of weird. And then like maybe a month or whatever later, that same thing happened, except this time it was with a drone over my head. And I said, okay, and then that starts, what that does to me is it's kind of letting me know through them that it's time to not see that person anymore. Okay. When their life becomes altered in ways that are similar to espionage or spying and that sort of thing, or information society stuff, then you start to recognize it a little bit as a possible threat to that person. But, I'm kind of being very vague about that, right now, because I don't want to I don't want to give away how I know completely. Mm-hmm. But those are those would be two of the ways, but I don't want to get too specific because you don't want to give other people ideas, in case they want to join the effort. So, but in Seattle, back to that, how do you like it there? I mean, is it?
Oh, I love it here. In fact, there's been discussion because I have to scramble to pay the rent every month, and okay. I have people that know me, that believe in me. It's kind of an interesting backstory, which I've only talked about partially on the show, but I won't go into that right now. But anyway, they help me to pay the rent, and there's been a discussion about actually moving to live with one of these people. One guy is in South Carolina, and another guy is in Florida. Actually, they have never helped me pay the rent, but that they would, allow me to stay there. But I didn't want to go there because I love the Northwest too much, and the mountains here, and I got Mount Rainier basically in my backyard. And, it's closer to Tacoma than it is to Seattle, because usually when you see Mount Rainier, it's like a Seahawk game or something like that, but it's farther away from Seattle. And I can ride there on my bike in one day all the way up to the base of the mountain and camp there,
Yeah, I ride bike too. I love bikes.
But I think this is the most beautiful area of the world.
Okay.
I actually think that you can prove that it is, that geographically it's the most unique area. We have what's called Puget Sound here, and there's no other place on Earth like it. It has no duplicate. The closest thing would be a fjord, like up in Norway, or something up in Alaska, an inlet. But this is much larger, and it's extremely beautiful. Also, we have another something that's unique. It's called the Olympic Peninsula. Now, if you look along the coastline of the United States, you will not. It's a geographical anomaly, and it's absolutely, it's this huge peninsula. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got the ocean on the left, and it has Puget Sound on the right, and then it's mostly pristine forest because you got this huge Olympic national park, but around that you have the national forest around the perimeter. Then you have this lovely highway that goes around that called Highway 101, and it's just I don't. We got two different mountain ranges here. We have a mountain range on the in the Olympic Peninsula called Olympic Mountains. Then of course we have the Cascades, which runs from British Columbia to Oregon. We also have 5 big snow cones. Oregon basically is, I would say this is the Washingtonian. It's a scaled down. I don't want to say poor man's version, but it's a scaled down version of Washington, except for the beaches. Their beaches are actually superior, mainly because they have these big, beautiful anomalies like rocks and stuff like that. And also our beaches, a lot of them are on Indian reservations, somewhat curiously. But other than that, we've got Oregon beat. And eastern Oregon and eastern Washington are similar. They're the complete opposite of the West. Everything changes and it becomes very flat. They don't have a lot of mountains, and the weather is totally different. It gets very cold in the winter, and it's the opposite in the summer. Where we live here, it's the mildest climate in the world. It has the least temperature variation. The downside is it rains a lot, but that's what creates all the beauty. We have another unique thing about Washington. On the western side of the Olympic Peninsula, you have the Olympic National Rainforest, and you have all this beautiful moss. It's because there's more precipitation there than anywhere else. This is where they made that movie, the first Twilight series film.
Okay.
There's a city over there called Forks, and it has the highest precipitation. And what's really unique is on the eastern side of the Olympics, they have a rain shadow around this cute little city called Sequim, and it has the exact opposite. It's semi-arid, and it hardly ever rains there, and because it's in the shadow of this beautiful mountain called Mount Olympus, which is the largest mountain in the Olympic mountains. And when the settlers first came to Sequim, they called it the desert, and you can actually grow cactus there. But what's neat about Sequim is that, it rains a lot all around it, but it's called the Blue Hole. It's a total anomaly, and I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but I plan on living there in the future, and I've been waiting for 2 decades. You'd think I would have got distracted and lost focus by now, but no. Dave plans on living to Sequim as soon as possible, and I do believe that I'll be there because people have had prophecies about this, and nothing's ever changed. It's all still the same. You just have to wait, God moves slower than we do. So, yeah. So that's some interesting information there.
Yes, there is. I had no idea. And I was almost headed toward Vancouver on my trip to Canada.
Vancouver. Now, it's interesting. We have a Vancouver in Washington State. There's 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that they're named after the same explorer. But that is a fairly large town. It's right down by the Columbia River, right north of Oregon. Yeah, Columbia.
Okay.
River down there.
That's the way I was going to head. Because they didn't have snow, and being that I ride a bike, I was really hoping that I could get somewhere where at least it doesn't snow, because, like I say, I'm getting older now, and I want to retire to my bicycle and to some peace and quiet, but mostly
that's
freedom.
That's where people go to retire, is in Sequim.
Okay.
Because these are people that still want to live here, but they don't want to go down to, Arizona, where it's all desert-like.
Oh, yeah.
But you've got the weather there. The weather is really favorable for older people in Sequim, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm
big
getting
retirement
up there.
community, yeah.
And time just has been flying. I left. My first asylum attempt was in 2006, and
You were in an asylum?
no, asylum for refugee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think, is it the same word? It's the same word, isn't it?
It sounds the same.
Okay, yeah. Then yeah, it does sound the same. And so I sought asylum for the first time in 2006, and when I left.
Oh yeah, it's the same word. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then when I left, I did not have any evidence, so I was pretty much said. They said, well, we can't just take your word for it, and then I had to come back here. And then since then, it's been that long. It's been, see, 2006, 10 years. It's been 10 years of my life in a holding pattern while being persecuted and tortured and oppressed and spied on and the whole thing. It still amazes me that something so simple could be so difficult. When you think about somebody fleeing for their life, or for their safety or well-being, in this case me, you would think that people would take it more seriously. When I show up in a country and, okay, so they didn't close my case the first time I went to the Europe, and they said, well, we can't even take you in here until they close that. And, later on, of course, at the time, you're not thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. You're just thinking, I got to figure this out. So when I went to where they said I had to go, then they even said you can't come in until you close the case that we have on you, and start a new one. And I thought to myself, I said, if I'm somebody that sees somebody that's running for their life, to me, and I can help them, there isn't a book that's going to stop me. Mm-hmm. There isn't a set of rules or something that I'm going to say, look, my hands are tied, you're not following protocol, any of that. And it's amazing that these people who I believe in some, the rules were made to, I believe, to deter people from going that route. But I already know that. They when you show up, it seems like they act like you are trying to get over on them. You're either, there's something going on. Either you're a mass murderer. Oh, no, I'm taking that back. I hate that when I do that. Okay, either you're escaping something, you're running away from your past, or you're just trying to take advantage of a system or something, and they don't ever just sit down and treat you like a human being. And in my case, and I mean, that's my case. I mean, you see these people coming from Syria by the droves, right, in the droves, and they left there. That started less than a week after I had made my just most recent escape attempt. Was less than a week after that, they flooded every country with migrants. Can you imagine what that's going to do if I try to go back again to anywhere? Where I'm going to be on the list of people that can access that process? I think.
You must believe that you have something to do with Bible prophecy, huh?
Well, being the highest Christian, and I say that because I can say God's elect. I can say highest Christian. I say highest Christian, and I also say God's elect at other times, but they're pretty much one and the same in my mind, But I knew, and I know that the more I make myself out to be this great man of God or whoever, the more these people will take pride in harming me. You know, the victory is sweeter over when I suffer because of them, then they are rewarded. That is the ultimate high for them, because they can't affect God, so they have to affect God's people. And there's nothing, in my opinion, greater to these people than trying to see me, persecuted or that sort of thing. But not to avoid your question, you know, I don't want to read the Bible. I did it a little bit, and I want to stay out of it. You know, I don't want to know.
Do you think the Illuminati's got something to do with the Bible?
Well, I think somebody had to have written it. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to think about when you think about the Bible that I don't want to think about sometimes. And that's that whoever wrote the Bible, not, you know, any of these other religions that, you know, that seem more humanistic, or that, you know, they don't seem as empowering as the Christian Bible. The Christian New Testament seems very empowering. And if you know, and if you do what it says correctly, or, you know, to a degree, please God, then you may have access to that. And if you do have, you know, if people have access to that, you know, then definitely, you know, I think it, you know, it should be, you know, I don't know. I guess I don't know what I would say about that, but I mean, I definitely think that it has, whoever wrote it, and I know that man had to have put pen to paper somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I really believe that there are certain things in the Bible that people can do to break the bonds that they hold you down with. And they know it, and I think that's why they are afraid. That's why they control it with these fake ministries and these false churches, is because if that power is used any other way than they want it to be used, it can probably ruin their day. Mm-hmm. And you know, go ahead.
Oh, well, you mentioned being tortured earlier. I mean, yeah. I'm assuming they're using some kind of technology.
Oh, yeah, well,
I mean, I've experienced stuff like that.
They've done both over the years. I mean, you know, they like most recently, I was at the store. This guy comes over and he puts his hand in my food, and he grabs it and he moves it. Yeah. And you know, but he had every reason to do it. But so what they did was they made this machine. When you go to pay for your food or whatever, the conveyor belt runs it away from you down to the end. But if your food doesn't go off that conveyor belt, the machine won't take your money. That's what the guy told me. So he came over and he puts his hand right over my freshly hot food and moves it. And that night I ended up with a sinus infection that for the next 4 weeks, I felt like I was going to die. And to this, even right now, and this was just a couple months ago, I still have that mucus in my nose because the doctors don't treat me. They've never treated me for anything in this state, never. The only thing they ever did was they burned off a skin blemish, and they have done far worse to me than that to even consider that anything at all. So they have never treated me for anything, no medical illness whatsoever. And I've had some doozies. And and they let you know that they are not ever going to treat you. They're not going to educate me. They're not going to give me physical health care unless it's that they're forced to. They have no other choice, or unless the health care that they're planning on giving me is to harm me further, potentially. I mean, that's the crazy version. The last one is, of course, the more fearful worst case scenario. But they have never given me health care. They've never done it, not once. Not even when I had dental insurance did they even fix one tooth in my mouth. They gave me a guy. They sent me to this place where they teach people how to be dentists, and they gave me a first-year student to fix my teeth, and he never fixed one tooth before my...
I've talked on the show about how that's one of the things that make me more anxious than just about anything is going to a dentist. I'd have to get revelation from God that this dentist is safe, because it's basically a crapshoot. They got so many Satanists out there. I mean, I was just talking to somebody on the phone today about this, and he was concerned about the same thing. They're putting stuff in people's mouths.
Right.
And how do you know? I mean, people just so naive. They think we're crazy, but they don't think that you need to be concerned about this, that God will just protect you. Well, I'm telling you, it doesn't work that way. He's allowing Christians to be abused. I mean, chemtrails fall on God's people too,
Well, he's allowing us to help each other. And if we can't get together to help each other, then, it's not necessarily our own fault, but, that's the beginning of really being wise, I think, is being able to do things for each other, even though we're in the world, but we're not of the world,
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about these drones that you said you've been seeing falling around you. And I have not seen anything float. Oh, yes, I have. I forgot about that. I was up in the mountains years ago, and it took me quite a while to figure out what the heck was going on, but there was this small black device that came whooshing right by me. I mean, I'm all by myself way up in the mountains. Nobody's around. But what was weird about it, Tom, is it actually made noise like a little jet plane. It wasn't, trying to be concealed. And that really mystified me, because one theory was that they wanted me to see it. It was there to create fear. So they weren't trying to be quiet. They wanted me to see it. Okay. But I got to be honest. They have these rich people catalogs. You like all the toys you can get your kid for Christmas. If you're multimillionaire, I mean, you can buy them these little cars, man. It's like a little Mercedes or something like that. Okay. And they have these toys out there. I mean, they used to call them Black Widows. This is all outdated technology. But they had technology back then that was rare, that you could buy your kid and he could fly this stuff around, like the drones they have today, They had that stuff a long time ago. And my theory was it probably wasn't the Illuminati. It was probably a rich kid's toy, and that was why it made noise, but I'm not certain. But I've seen things up in the sky. I've seen small metallic discs, and I actually think they wanted me to see them because they can be invisible, and they can also hide in clouds.
Well, he said this one was one of those, like those newer ones with the 4 little propellers on each, one on each corner.
Yeah. Those are classic drones.
Yeah, and it was just a few feet above his head.
Now, have you seen those in close proximity to yourself?
No, I don't pay attention.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that I never pay attention to that, because I don't think they would use it too much on me, because when I go out, I ride a bike, and I don't even know necessarily what direction I'm going to go. So I think it would be too hard for them to keep up with me with a drone. So I have never seen one, and I don't typically stay in one place for very long. Usually if I go anywhere, it's just to go shopping, or I go to get something for my bike and I come back. So I really don't they don't really have much of an opportunity, a window of opportunity to use a drone on me. But the guy that I talked to that said they droned him, he had to be there. So he had no way he couldn't just walk away.
Huh.
And that was something that concerned him. But and this guy that I'm talking about, man, I'm telling you, dude, this guy is really nice. I mean, I've met some people in my life, man, that I was glad I met. And of course, there's always the betrayal in everybody. They turn a little bit against you to keep their own self-preservation, and I'm not casting aspersions. I don't know if he's done any of that, but he's just one of those people that I'm glad I met him. I really am. I mean, I've met a lot of people in my life, man, and I'll tell you right now, I'm glad I met that guy. And his girlfriend, who really doesn't, she puts on a front about her, she's very deep. You're not going to, if you ever got past her surface, there's a whole lot going on. So I don't really talk to her too much, not because of that, but because, it's his girlfriend, and I'm one of those guys who don't really want to involve myself too closely with somebody else's woman. And B is that she does what she has to do. She's dedicated to her cause. If that cause is to be against anything, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get her to change her position on that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't go there with her.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, yeah, that's the only time. I've never seen a drone. I see them on TV. I watch a TV show on called The Gadget Show, that they upload. And they showed a couple that were very nice, man. High definition. They could go up so like 200 or 300 feet or something. I mean, they were pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But
well, there's all kinds of drones out there. I'm mainly talking about military industrial types, or the Illuminati have their own little drones. Now, I've got I've got a pet praying mantis, and it's kind of interesting because I was stroking his backside, and he didn't want me to do that. He kind of flared up at me, but he's pretty much trained and adapted. But it's kind of weird to look at this thing, never fully knowing where he was sent to me. Because he came through the window, he sat on the windowsill and stared at me a lot. He actually faced away from me, and he turned his head almost, like 140 degrees or something like that, and just stared at me.
Wow.
Like this little machine, and then he landed on me after a while. After he crawled up the cord on my computer mouse, and then he landed on me. So I decided to. I was researching him for about an hour, thinking about whether I should keep him, and because they have like different regulations and stuff like that from state to state. But when he landed on me, I decided to catch him, and then I go, well, I'll figure out whether to release him or not. But anyway, I mean, it's kind of weird to sit there and look at this thing, and he's carnivorous, you have to feed him things.
Okay.
And it's kind of troubling to me because I don't like to kill anything. I'm the kind of guy that takes spiders and puts them in tissue paper and puts them outside without hurting them, I don't like to stomp on things or spray on things.
Right.
Things. And so anyway, I mean, it's kind of weird to sit here and look at him, never knowing for sure whether he's some kind of a high tech. See, they could be biological. I mean, he's clearly biological. He's not made out of, some kind of alternative
microchips or.
Yeah, but I mean, you never really know. I mean, he's sitting right here, I don't worry about that kind of stuff because, see, I think everything is totally monitored. All motion on the planet is monitored. So to me, it doesn't bother me. That kind of thing. We're talking about different levels of monitoring and different levels of hierarchy. That's what we're really concerned about.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think there's an overarching
the
monitoring that just picks up everything, but it's more of a biological machine that humans have to tap into if they're interested in one particular thing that might have gone on. So.
Huh. Yeah. What did you give him a name or her? It or her?
I thought about calling him Metatron, which is a kind of obscure name in a non-canonical text, but
yeah.
it's not officially his name yet. So I think he's probably a male because the females are bigger. And I've noticed that they use them. The Illuminati uses the praying mantis as goddess symbology, similar to the much more well-known, Queen Bee.
Right.
Because they are
really?
known to devour the males, the females. They're bigger. And
right.
Feminists would love these creatures.
yeah. Well,
symbolically, have a few of these around.
Send them to Fox News. I think they got a whole line of them. Their women run that place. It sure seems like. But I think that's their battlefield. Is the job place. Now that they're coming of age, they're not they're not denied as many opportunities as they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think that's one of the things that they're kind of taking very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Well, on this show, we actually talk about how the Illuminati are running everything, but I actually think there's a matriarchy that runs it.
Oh yeah. Female?
I believed in that a long time ago, and I abandoned it for quite a period of time, and I've gone back to it recently. I'm seeing evidence for it all around us.
Okay.
It's covert that they're ruling.
That's interesting theory. Yeah, that's you can see it in you can see it in a lot in the media. When you look at Anchorman, the movie, I think it was the first one where the woman finally gets hired as a news anchor.
Did you say the Iron Man?
No, the Anchorman.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched that one. The Iron Man is one of these movies that we talk about. That's about the king and the queen, this esoteric king and the queen. But go ahead.
Okay, and then, I was just going to say that you can see the struggle. They portray the struggle in what do you call it? The workplace, especially in the media, where women are becoming more prevalent and they're becoming the bosses, and they don't put up with any of that old time fake sexual harassment stuff that they used to get, where they have the guys that are okay, women are inferior and that sort of thing. I think Anchorman kind of nailed it a little bit with that. But Iron Man, I was thinking about, I got a mask from the dollar store, and I thought about doing reflective tape on it, and then because I probably won't show my face on the internet, I'll probably just, even if I ever go Skype or anything like that, I think I can. I'm just going to still cover my face. I know that sounds weird, but I think that's probably the best thing for right now.
Well, when I talk to people on Skype, I'm not looking at them normally.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. If I do, but that's one of the things. I got the mask, and as far as Iron Man goes, I think I can put some red reflective tape on it and some white reflective tape, and then I'm gonna just leave it like that. But now you got your picture right on the internet. You got if that's you.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say something real quick.
Yeah.
I talked about the synchronicity, and another thing that just happened today is that I have these insights from day to day, and I write them all down. That's how I don't forget them. Okay. And so I came up with another reason just today that indicates that there's this secret matriarchy that's ruling everything. Now stop and think about this. When we talk about England, we speak about England in a lofty manner that elevates that nation above every other country, but we do this without realizing it. There's only one country that we call great, and that's Great Britain.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? And we just take that for granted, I'm saying there's an esoteric reason. Now, the reason I say there's an esoteric reason is I actually believe that the British Empire is still running everything, but I think the Vatican is behind them, and I think there's somebody behind the Vatican. But I'm just saying the British Empire is still ruling covertly, and I think that America is a colony, and we're basically a corporation. I mean, we are a corporation, like in a court of law. I mean, you can actually prove this. I've talked about this before. But anyway, something else that's interesting about England, whenever we talk about the Queen, we say the Queen. I mean, everybody knows who we're talking about, right? The Queen of England. I mean, it's not the Queen of Denmark or the Queen of Norway or the Queen of Sweden or the Queen of Greece. Everybody knows. But we always talk about the Queen, but do we ever talk about the King?
No.
No.
He's really a non-entity when it comes to that. When you see him, I mean, he's always in the shadows, or he's not really presented that well.
Now,
so,
I'm saying that this is all done for an esoteric purpose. I was thinking about this last night, and it's all scripted. If you actually, when I say scripted, I'm talking about how Queen Elizabeth II actually was moved in the position to even take the throne. It had to be all manipulated for an esoteric purpose to get her on there, because, see, I believe that she symbolizes a singular entity, which is female, that is ruling everything, and she's the queen, the real queen. That's, I mean, you got to wonder about this stuff,
Yeah.
Just like whenever we say Isis and Osiris, I've never heard anybody say Osiris and Isis. Why do we say that? Again, see, we're not thinking. We're just repeating things, but we're not thinking. Look at the chessboard, and you'll notice that the Queen is the most powerful piece. And I'm what's called a cosmic dualist, and I believe that the chessboard is designed to communicate the philosophy of cosmic dualism, which can be reconciled with different religions like Zoroastrianism or Christianity, because we're just about basic principles here. But, I mean, the Queen is the most powerful piece on there. And people don't think about this, I'm saying it's done for an esoteric reason, you see. Now, I mean, this stuff is like all around us. I just came up with this today. I thought about it last night, but I didn't write it down until today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this stuff is out there, man. I mean, people are not thinking about it, But they communicate this in movie after movie after movie. People are not picking up on it. Now, what you do see, now you know for a fact that when you watch these movies, they keep having these kind of super women, heroine-type figures that are very powerful, and what they're doing is they're kicking men around, right?
Some of them I've seen seem to be favoring women quite a bit, yeah.
There's all kinds of examples of this. I mean, we see it in the commercials where a man is learning from a woman. They're trying to sell a product, and he's kind of stupid. And she goes, "Didn't you know about this, honey?" And she starts telling him, giving him the spiel, Because after all, I mean, it's at the most simple, basic level. I mean, they're communicating over and over. Men are less, they're not as intelligent as women. And I'm saying that this entire culture, basically, is first of all, I believe that women rule America covertly. They do it by their wiles. They're not. A lot of times, they're not even doing it consciously. They're just imitating their mother, and their mother learned how to do this, from her mother, and also just society in general. It's all kind of a subtle type thing. Now, there's women out there that will use their wiles and maximize everything. These are actually habits that you have to identify. For instance, Christian women that withhold sex from their husbands or throw temper tantrums and pout. This is how you can control men, just like little kids in a store who want, in the 1950s, who want, "Mommy, give me some candy," and they give them the candy to shut them up. You know what I mean? You can't do that, because then you got a devolving relationship there. Now the child is, knows how to maneuver his mother to get what he wants. Now, what are you going to do about it? Because it's not going to stop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think when you see, I kind of came up with a philosophy that women don't give birth to a philosophy, they give birth just to a child, but I think that, that they're now more taking a greater role in, their children's upbringing as far as philosophy is concerned, because, they don't want history repeating itself. They don't want the things the bad habits that come naturally to end up, affecting their child. And I think so. In order for women to be confident, and they may need to see that sort of thing, like the old blaxploitation movies where the superhero was a black guy and he could do all kinds of things, almost like the old, Chinese karate movies. They were just that exaggerated. But, to somebody, to a little black boy or a girl, that may be what they need to see to give themselves confidence so that they can go out and do something, And I think for some people that might not be necessary, but I think maybe in the case of girls where, they don't really automatically necessarily get accepted as leaders, have to, see something over the top in order to make it, just to bring themselves up to the norm, or what should be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really think they're dissing men. I think what they're doing is they're trying to empower the girl children to make sure that they're not settling for something that they shouldn't have to settle for, because so many men in this world, man, will just try to, they will go out and try to get a woman and maybe have a baby and stuff and, start a life, and not really go out there to make her, to be her equal, or to be, just to think of, put their best interest at heart. And, for years and years, you could kind of look at, the old days where that was the case,
Mm-hmm.
And now I think as much as offensive it is to us, sometimes seemingly offensive to us as men, you have to just say, you know what? Good for them. It's something that might actually have to be done to bring these people up to a level of confidence where they're not taken advantage of. Because so many people are taken advantage of, and before they're 18, some of them can get pregnant, before they're fully aware of what's going on. They've already been sidetracked, So I don't really look at those too much as negative things. I think whenever you see these women, man, let me tell you something. I'm pretty sure none of us would be here without a woman.
Right.
So we really have to give them the benefit of the doubt in a lot of things, man, because, let's face it, man, without them and without them being happy, there goes the future,
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
so
what I want to say is something I have not said on here before, is that this
Hmm?
female entity that I mean, she's basically a goddess, that I
Okay,
believe is
you
running the
think
show.
right.
She favors women. And if you were to take this or run with this would explain a lot of things. And she basically despises men.
Yeah.
And you could even go so far as that she doesn't like their physical structure.
Wow.
She would prefer that they're more feminized, because that's what's happening. They're putting all these diabolical toxins, and they're changing the shoulder and hip size of both males and females. We're being altered. People don't even realize this is going on through what's called bioengineering, and men are being feminized, their structure. I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily looking for this, but occasionally I just look up, and there's like a male about 15 years old, and you can see that I didn't used to see any guys like this, but his face is very feminine in its structure, because I believe that it's because he's been exposed to a massive amount of female estrogens. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in the food. It's in the water. It's in the air. You can't get away from it. There's no place to go. The only thing you can do, you can detoxify and limit your exposure, which you have to do. And it's going to affect some people more radically than other people. I also saw a guy that was not all that old, but he had female breasts, and he wasn't real overweight either. Now, there's a small possibility he was one of these people that's going through one of these, transgender operations or something like that. But numerically, that's probably not what's going on. But the guy was growing female breasts, and you're going to see more and more of that. This has been going on for quite a while, but it's getting more and more exaggerated to the point where it's just completely outlandish. Because I actually said this show, there's a conspiracy out there to feminize men, going back hundreds of years, where that's why they were making beer out of hops, because it has natural estrogens in it, and you don't have to make beer out of hops. That's like the American way. Yeah. And that will make you sleepy, by the way. Beer is kind of interesting because it's a stimulant, but it obviously also puts you to sleep. It really depends on how much you drink. If you keep drinking it, it's going to get more of a sedative effect. You know what I mean? But initially, it stimulates you, which is kind of interesting. But I believe there's a conspiracy to feminize men, actually, with beer. And the fact is that all plastics, without exception, unless they're a natural plastic, which most people have not heard of, all plastics and all pesticides have female estrogens in them. And what these female estrogens are doing is they're feminizing men. They're making them more passive. There's a whole phenomenon, which I've talked about in the show before. It has to do with young males that are not motivated to do anything, watch video games and look at porn. They're not even. They can't even get motivated to go out and hook up with a girl for the night. One night. Right. Oh, well, I'd rather watch my video game, You got to travel back and forth, I don't know. Should I go do that? I don't know. Maybe next Friday I'll put it off,
Yeah.
It's Tuesday night, I'll do that on Friday. I don't know. It's watch a video game, They live in their mother's basement. But, what it does is it makes women aggressive, and you see this. Men are stepping back in the background, and women are stepping into the foreground. And people are saying, well, that's because they have to do it because men are not doing what they're. I'm saying that there's it's not just a social engineering thing; it's a bioengineering thing. Because excessive estrogen, it makes women more aggressive. You can see it all over, and you can see how women are becoming more masculine. And where's this stuff going to end? I mean, they're coming out and saying, that we don't want to distinguish between male and female clothing now, and we don't want to be judgmental. I mean, they're not going to stop. They're never satisfied. It's a total freak show, is where we're headed, man.
But that goes back to Chris's show, Hopes Busters, earlier. When him and that guy were talking.
I couldn't hear because I had no audio. But
they were talking about society, and they were talking about how much control you have over it, and what you can do to change it. And it wasn't a positive outcome. It was really a negative. I mean, not negative, but I mean, it really came down to Chris was saying that que sera, sera, even though the other guy was really determined to say what he was trying to say, I think, Chris was kind of coming around to the fact that, you're not going to really be able to change much. I mean.
I agree with that. Chris believes the same thing I do, that we live in a system of control, and we don't have any. I think he believes that we're basically powerless.
Yeah, I think he kind of does, but I mean.
Apart from prayer,
Yeah. Because I think Chris
Well, he does believe we're all slaves, and that's what I believe. People don't like to believe that. But
you don't like to believe that, or he don't?
I said people don't like to believe they're slaves.
People don't like. Oh yeah, well I mean
this is a massive understatement. People have a very unslave-like mentality. Any kind of slavery, they don't like it. Any kind of slavery, they don't like to believe they're a slave or anybody's a slave or slavery or you know what I mean.
Right. But, I mean, you're going to have to define that. It's like the word schizophrenic earlier. You know, there's so many different definitions to it where you almost can't include some of the people that are actually that they include in the definition. You know, I mean, when you say slave, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I consider myself a slave, but I didn't even know it. You know,
I consider myself a slave. I haven't said that yet. It should be pretty obvious. Right, but there's degrees of freedom. On a recent podcast, I put in the term enslaved minds. Your mind is enslaved. Yeah. And obviously, the more knowledge you have and the more awareness you have, you may still be a quote-unquote slave, but your mind is going to be a lot more free than other people who don't have a clue what's going on. They don't have a clue.
But here's the thing with that, and these, you know, you might have, you know, heard this before. You know, when people used to say, you know, you can imprison the body, but you can't imprison the mind.
Uh-huh.
And I think that is a sad misconception because, you know, your body is a big part of how you think. And if they show somebody, these are the types of reverse psychologies that they use on people to get them to think that real suffering doesn't exist, you know, and it almost nullifies it, or they'll say like I'm a slave, you know, and they have a job that they don't like, and they have you know,
slave job.
They don't, right, so they don't care too much for that, but in reality, a real slave is somebody who is being absolutely is under hold on, I'm trying to think of the word. I want to say ownership. Mm-hmm. But you know, I mean, who's pretty much being controlled. Everything they do is either allowed or denied by somebody else.
Well, this is something that's interesting. I just want to say that there was a period in Israel's history, they were not slaves.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Not everybody was a slave. And in pagan cultures, the people were spiritual slaves. You know, we'll say of Satan or whatever the heck.
Yeah, the word slave.
There's different types of slavery. But in this culture, I believe that we are all slaves. It doesn't matter whether you're free in Christ, you know, spiritually. Yeah. Because it's a covert slavery that is all-encompassing. You can't get out from under it. You can free yourself significantly in your mind, just like I mentioned earlier, but there's nowhere to go. I talk about slave planet, you know. And God has put us into this mess. Now, you may not agree with me. But he has to be responsible. If you believe in a sovereign God, you can't blame all this on the devil. But I actually believe that this is a corporate punishment against God's own people because of the sins of the past. But there has to be a reason why we're all being sprayed by a chemtrail. Actually, the fact that we are being sprayed by a chemtrail, whether people realize it or not, that's an infallible proof. If you have a sovereign God, that we're under some kind of corporate judgment, even if you don't really understand that, because it's happening to everybody. I mean, God would not have allowed these things to happen to Israel if they were being obedient. He's not going to allow them to be sprayed like an insect day after day. Come on. See, God was their protector. He had a covenant with them. Mm-hmm. This will tell you that something's wrong here. I keep talking about this over and over in the show because all these Christians want to believe we're under the new covenant. Well, the covenant has to do, I believe, like Judaism. This is something you haven't heard before. That I believe the new covenant. I just think it's future. But anyway, like Judaism does. But see, the covenant has to do with protection. So where's our protection? Hey, you talk to a Christian. You talk to a Christian who's a targeted individual, and he lives in a different world than you live in. He doesn't have protection. And so you mentioned earlier about the human mind, but you don't have any protection unless God protects you. They can do whatever they want with anybody's mind. So it really depends on whether God's protecting you as an individual or not, and what degree of protection too.
Right. Well, like you said,
he'll allow some things, but protect you from other things.
Well, like you said, you have two people you can move in with at any time or whatever, And I say, as somebody who's definitely a religious and political prisoner, regardless of what delusions that these people may try to drum up in their head about, well, he's not in a situation that restricts him in every way possible, that's not the case. But, when it comes to my freedom and that sort of thing, that is really my only goal. As much as I'd like to get into the conversation with you about all these other things, the only real thing that I am interested in is my freedom. And I know that sounds weird. You as a talk show person, you have to continue these shows, week after week, whatever, and that's going to be your thing. But for me, this is not my thing. What I'm doing with you right now is I'm letting you know that I have a situation that I need to fix so that I can go on to be who I'm supposed to be anyway, and that this persecution is an effective process keeping me from doing that. So as all this, all the stuff that you can think of, the theories and the metaphysics and the whole thing, it does have pertinence, but it doesn't have substance right now. It doesn't make my life better to know any of that. And for the most part, if it does make somebody's life better, maybe that's the case, but I doubt it. Most of the things that people say in this world are not really effective enough for somebody to have anything good come of it. For what I do, for my ministry, me, the God's elect, that is my job. So when people say, the church is doing this, the church is doing that, I have to tell you right now, the reason why that God's people are suffering in many ways is because I am not free. And I know that sounds arrogant. How many times have I had to say things to people and they tell me, you can't be God's elect because you say you're God's elect. You're not humble enough to not admit it. And
I think when you use the term God's elect, you sound like you're using it as a singular term.
What exactly does that mean?
Well,
do you mean like
it's used in both a plural sense and it's used in both a singular sense. Israel is an elect nation, a single nation. But typically, the rest of the time where the word elect is used, it's referred to a group of people. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because then I'm going to have to go back to saying the highest Christian. Okay, but I like God's elect better because it lets people know, at least it focuses on the fact that I am the one that matters. Mm-hmm. It's not their church. It's not TV church. It's not, anything else. And then I'll go out on a limb a little bit, and say it's not even the Pope. As much as those people want to believe that he is the mediator between God and man, he is what he is. He is the head of the Catholics. Like you were saying about the cults before, well, I don't want to use the word cult. I'll take that back. But, even though the definition may be correct, it doesn't sound right at the moment because I'm trying to be nice. So he is the head of the Catholics. The whatever reverend is the head of the Baptists and the Lutherans, those are the heads of those groups. They are not God's people. They are the heads of the people that followed them to get to God. And in my case, I am God's chosen. All of these people know it. Whoever knows me knows it. And even if they haven't met me, and like you said, there is a universal knowledge after a while that people will become aware of, whether they like it or not. In some cases, going about, the Spirit of God will tell them, yes, this is the guy, or he is mine. And what they do is they ignore that. See, that is when the problem occurs, is when they ignore the fact that I'm God's elect. That means now what? Now you've just closed almost every door. You're not, where are you going to go now? You know what I mean? And so that's where I tell them. I say, look, until I get freedom, until I get asylum or whatever, and dude, this last 10 years it's just icing on the cake for them. They know. I'll guarantee you, so many people, high level, know who I am in this country, that they know that every day is a prize to them that I am still standing, or at least I am still in the position that I am in right now. You can believe it, man. Every day when they get up, they know, man, this is the day their Lord has brought. This is the day that their Lord, whoever they worship, whoever lets them live, gave them their day. And that's what they rely on. And when they see, if they know that I am free, then their day might just become a little bit more worrisome. And I'm just hypothesizing on that, because they may not even be that consciously aware, some people, of life or what's going on. But those higher, the people that are in higher positions that know that who I am are absolutely knowing that every day is a gift to them if I'm staying right here. And they're not letting me out. I'm telling you right now, I've tried 1, 2, 3 times to get away and to get asylum in another country. 3 times. In desperate, no different, probably even worse situation than these people you see on TV who just are running from war or whatever's going on, because they all have nice clothes. They seem like they're healthy. Their teeth are all decent. They look like they're educated. You want to see me? You want to see how horrible I look? As somebody who's taken care of himself his whole life. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I did, serious for a little while. I don't do drugs. For a minute, and I don't touch the hard stuff of anything. And you can look at me as somebody who has absolutely been a victim of constant persecution. And they do not want that seen. They do not want me to be known. They want me kept in the dark. I am their, their dirty little secret. And so whatever excuse that they gave me in Canada, whatever excuse they gave me in Europe, they're just excuses, man. They hire these people to do their job, and as a human being, when you put your job in front of your person, your what word am I looking for here? Your physical human nature or human existence, when you put your job in front of that, then you're exactly what they want. That's you're taking the heat for them, or what word am I looking for, man? You're the patsy. You're the patsy, and they don't care. And these people, why do you think a lot of these people don't like the police? Because the police are the patsy. They're the ones who will go and do anything that they're told to do without question. And you don't have any recourse with them. You don't say, look, I am this person, I am a free person, and you have no authority over me. They don't care. When you create people that put their jobs in front of their own existence as a human being, then you have a system that works well for oppressing anybody. And that's what they do. They not only do they do their job that way, but some of them, man, they'll go out of their way and they'll commit crimes. You know what I mean? They will harm people for the establishment. I've been tortured in the back of a police car before. I know.
Hey, Tom, have you ever heard, are you familiar with voice-to-skull technology?
Voice, I missed that second word.
Voice-to-skull, that's what they call it.
Oh, no. I mean, I've seen that thing that Jesse the Body did on his show.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
I'm talking about when they beam stuff into your head, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, I don't know about that. Those are the things that, you know, if it can't be proven, you may as well not discuss it too much. You know,
well, I've talked about what I call dream tech on the show, and what's kind of scary about that, there's no real way to prove that that there's anybody that hasn't experienced that. How do you know? I mean, you're sleeping. They could be doing things with. I mean, if God's going to allow them to spray you with chemtrails, how do you know what He's permitting when you're sleeping? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think God is permitting anything. I think one of the people that work, you
don't think God's permitting chemtrails?
Well, you know, God, like
I mean, He could stop them at any time.
But it's man's inhumanity to man. Well, I think, and that's what I think that's why I think, remember when I told you earlier that I think that you were the betrayer type, you know, the blasphemer, or what, you know, what, I'll have to go back and listen to this show after we hang up, but I told you I thought you were something, and I think that also falls into that category where you say that God can stop things and God has this, you know, and that is what also is attributed to what I referred to you earlier as, you know, that's one of the characteristics is when you do that. Mm-hmm. You know, otherwise I could entertain it, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay.
I mean, it's you know, because remember, we are not friends, and I know that anything I say on this radio show will be gone and out there tomorrow. So I have to be as clean as I can be. I can't say something that I'm going to regret. Mm-hmm. And I also can't, or, you know, I prefer not to, but I also can't get into a deep conversation about God, because those things I hold close to me. You know, that's information that, man, if people get information like that in this world, man, it's done. They'll just abuse it. The reason why, and the reason why I do the signs and the wonders is so that people recognize me as God's elect, but also I can't be discussing this stuff about God, and I can't be defending God. That's not my place, man. If you know, when most people will try to accuse God of things and then ask the people that say they work for Him or they follow Him, like that's their responsibility. But I'm telling you, man, it ain't. And whatever you have things with God, you talk to Him. You know what I mean? That's above my pay grade. And I think that's one of the things that you need to know and other people need to know, is that when you try to say, oh, God, let this happen, God, then you know what? Go talk to God, because God is definitely, I don't want to say he, she, whatever. I know that sounds politically correct, but I don't want to offend people. But that is where you have to see what your belief in God is. You know, go find out. I mean, you want results, of course. You get me to the top where I should be. I'm at the top now, but I mean, the only thing stopping me is that these people have robbed me of billions and billions of dollars worth of ideas. They've oppressed me. They kept me uneducated, purposefully, very purposefully kept me uneducated. Do
you think they think you're a genius, Tom?
I don't know. I would imagine that they knew that I was smart. Then the FBI guy came to our school in elementary. He asked us a bunch of questions, and I got a couple of them right, and they were hard questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then they fingerprinted all of us, which I thought was, I'm like, wow. So this is fingerprints, and because I was a little kid, nobody knew back then, that they could have been up to no good. Taking our fingerprints and asking us all these hard questions and, what could they possibly be up to? We were just kids, we didn't know anything.
I was going to say, you mentioned the term, God's chosen, but that's actually a term that's used, it's a messianic term that's, refers to the Messiah.
Yeah, well, like I tell people, if Jesus isn't coming back, I'm him. And I use that jokingly.
You don't think Jesus is coming back?
Well, like I said, if Jesus isn't coming back, I'm him.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Because that would mean.
You want to restate that? Just restate that again.
Oh no! Come on, it's on the record.
No, I'm serious. I don't think I was actually doing something, and you said. I know it was a heavy statement. I thought I heard it right, but I wasn't sure because I was distracted. You don't want to say it again?
You get to go to talkshoe live. No.
Do you know what a messianic complex is, Tom?
Well, yeah. Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? Who knows more of what crazy is than somebody who's accused of being crazy all the time? Not all the time, but
Yeah. Well, what they do, it's becoming more and more common, like in prisons and stuff like that. They program people to make them believe that they're special. Let me give you an example. We had a big drama in the background, and there was a person outside of our group that was involved to some degree, and it turns out that we found out that he believed he was one of the two witnesses, and he had this buddy who believed the same thing. And they both came out of prison, and my conclusion was that they were programmed in prison. Mm. And, going in the military is kind of like going into prison, or the reverse is true. It's like you don't have any rights, and it's been proven over and over. They do secret experimentation on people. I mean, you want to talk about a lab rat. You're a lab rat, man.
Yeah, but here's what I'm saying is
they drug you, and you don't know what happened to you, and They implant, grandiose beliefs in your mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm. Oh, not at all. And you know why? Because I know these people, man. This is what, if there's anything real, I'm real. And you have to accept that. I think other people have to accept it. If most of the things, like earlier I mentioned things that were very pertinent to what you were doing today, or you were these were things that I said that I brought up that were could be considered words of knowledge, and you were really kind of like, hey, that brings something up that just recently happened. That kind of thing is the norm for me. And these are the things that you have to equip to me. You can't, you have to give me credit for that sort of thing. I'm not in society enough to be able to know any of these little quirks about people that I could bring up, like what's popular, what's not popular, what's trending, what's not trending. Anything I say that is something that is relevant to you in a certain way, like, oh, I was just thinking of that, and blah, 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 that all should be accounted to me as something that most people don't do. And when you see, most or all, and when you see people who say that they're Christians, the two witnesses, or Enoch and Elisha, or whoever they say they are, you'll know them by their fruits, man. That's one of the things that the Bible says. You have to know. You should almost already know me by now. even after this conversation, even though it's something silly, if you go back and listen to it, I have brought up almost everything that your show talks about, and I don't even listen to your show. And and those things were pertinent to you. But when you get to the point where you can say, oh, like these people always say, well, if you're chosen, do a miracle. Every day, the next guy wants you to prove it. Every time you prove it to one person, then the next guy wants you to prove it, and it gets like that.
Have you worked any signs and wonders?
Oh yeah, well, I just do what I do. I don't want to claim anything that's too weird or anything, but I did the umbilical cord thing. I wrote the paper on that. As far as I can see, the whole, that worked out, and without any education whatsoever. The knee surgery worked out, a spinal cord treatment a little bit worked out. I'm telling you, I've done a lot, man. They've stolen billions, probably trillions of dollars worth of ideas from me.
Hey, Tom, I should probably get going here pretty soon. I don't have to go right away, okay? How long have we been on here, anyway?
That too. But I was also trying to let you know that, that by now you should know who I am, at least somewhat more inclined to believe it than not. And when other people say they are who they are, that's probably not. You should at least be able to say I am who I am. It almost. If you don't want, that's okay. But as time goes by, this thing will unravel itself. I don't have to, like I say, do a trick, like a card trick every time somebody comes along to say, this is, look at that,
right.
Or not a trick, but a miracle. So
Jesus didn't do that kind of thing. People wanted him to perform miracles, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that he was in his time possibly doing what he wanted to do for whoever he wanted to do them. And in this day and age, I do what I do, and that's how things are.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't the things. Every person has their own gifts, and some according to this and some according to that, blah blah blah. But I just had to let you know that, and for the most part, to keep in touch about this whole asylum thing, is I'm trying to figure that out right now. I don't know what is going to happen as far as the countries are concerned now that these Syrian refugees are just flooding Europe. That's going to be a hindrance to me, and I don't know if that was pre-planned either. I don't know what's going on. If either you can't really trust necessarily the news stories to be true, maybe there aren't all those people, I don't know, but I hate to get over there and find out that I'm, my appointment's 2 years from now and you have to come back, because, it looks like they're absolutely doing everything they can to keep me from getting asylum.
You think what's going on in Syria possibly has to do with the start of World War III?
Well, I think what it has to do with is flooding the country's asylum-seeking process, so that I can't go there and get asylum as easily as I could if they didn't go there. And when I got to Canada, they didn't accept me. They would have accepted me, but they said that I would have had to spend all my time in jail.
So you want asylum because you have people following you, right?
No, none of that.
Oh, why do you want asylum?
Well, it's one of those things that when you're because I have built up a case that I consider good enough to prove that I have been persecuted pretty much my entire life, and can absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, prove, in my opinion, so far, from as best as I can see, or best as I can relate, say that I am absolutely a victim of persecution and have been for many years, and I can prove it. I don't have to say I'm being chased by people and I don't have to say they're watching me from the bushes or anything like that. I already have a, you know what I mean?
Okay, I got some talking points written down here though, but I did want to ask you about people following you, because we talk about that, right? So you do have people following you.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. But I mean, it was in the other chat room, I think, and it was one of those things that, you know, when you talk about following, it's a whole other thing, because that is something that is too weird. You know, if I think someone's following me, I will go talk to them. You know, there's no way I'm going to let somebody follow me without confronting them. You know what I mean? If I see them.
Well, they're going to try to play psychological tricks on you, and I would prefer to just go around and throw it back at them.
Oh yeah, well, you know.
If I think somebody's doing something to me, my reaction is just to smile a lot.
Yeah, well,
I never show any kind of fear. I'm not trying to disguise fear, because I actually don't. Up until this point, I haven't experienced any fear. And, they keep a respectful distance from me, and it's very consistent, which they don't do with other people around me. Yeah. And that gives me confidence, because why don't you do something? You know, you're always hanging back there in the shadows.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of this little fun little song and dance we have, but I have not had anything happen to me in years in the store. It only happened one time. I told the story. But I had something happen to me the last time I went to the store. They sent a guy to me, and they wanted me to know. But because of this number that he wore on his shirt, I'll talk about this in the show, but everything he did was incredibly subtle, and I actually had to analyze it, and it was only because of the number that I knew for sure, because I was thinking about that number on a podcast I was listening to, and I was actually discussing that number with other people, so I knew for certain this guy was sent. You know? But try to get into your head, you know, and
well, thank you. And here's one of the things that I was trying to say. If you know, we should keep in contact. I got your Skype. And
well, you can come on the show again.
Yeah, well, I don't want to necessarily be a member of a show or anything. But
there's no members here. just me, I guess.
But I don't want to be a person on a show. This was just a conversation to let you know that, you know, when you hear all these people and they talk about God and they want to know all this and that, I just had to tell you right now that I am the answer to many of these problems. And I know you want to say the delusions of grandeur and the whole thing, and I understand that. And it's the first self-defense mechanism thought most people probably get. But I'm telling you, this is just a very long statement put in a very short comment, because if I was to actually be able to do the things that I have to do or want to do as the highest Christian, I would be able to, that whole time wouldn't have to be wasted on me telling you these stories and discussing the matter. So really it's all done. Everything is done with me and you and the whole talking about God thing, because I have to tell you, I am the only one. And if it doesn't happen with me, dude, there's only a couple other scenarios, but I'm not going to get into them because they're pretty much considered fate anyway. You know, so but without considering just fate, you know, then you have to consider the fact that anybody who's looking for a change in the world has to be looking to me. And that's probably the only thing I can say about that. But you got my Skype and you got my email address, so if you know anybody that's interested in giving me a hand with these legal things where I can present a case in front of the courts and show them that that I have been persecuted and that these agencies are colluding and the whole thing. If you got somebody that can do that, man, you just put them on to me and I'll be thrilled, because that's one of the reasons I was trying to get out to the West Coast is one of my relatives was a paralegal, and they might be able to connect me up with a lawyer. So, you know, if you want to do that, you know, tell people, look, this guy is probably the real deal. If you want, I'm not going to tell you that, but, you know, you listen to the podcast and see what you think. And then and then just let them know, man, I need an attorney that can present this case before a court, because that's plain and simple that these people who run everything or most everything are colluding against me because I am the highest power next to the throne that they have already. You know what I mean?
So you have the answers for humanity, and the Illuminati is trying to prevent you from helping.
Right. Well, the umbilical cord thing was one thing. The knee surgery. Then, the cold sore thing that I used the wart remover on the cold sore. That seems to be working so far. I don't know if I cured them, but, I don't get the cold sores very often. I haven't had one since. So there's been an element of medical influence with no education whatsoever. There's the Bible, that the whole gospel thing that I've done, and the walk with Christ that I almost wouldn't have done if if I wasn't almost persecuted. I don't know if I would have even walked this route. So it's you know what I mean? I was a Christian, but I would have probably, I don't know if I would have done it the way I did. I would have went and probably started a church or something on my own. But definitely, you tell them, man, that I'm the man, and that is the way it is, whether they like it or not. And I can be honest with you about that. I'm not trying to be a tough-sounding bully type like that guy on YouTube or anything. I'm not trying to push anybody around. I'm just telling you that's how it is, and I have to live it. I'm the one who has to be persecuted for it, and I don't renounce it. If these people were that scary and keeping me oppressed and full of fear, what did even Satan tell Jesus? Renounce Christ and bow down. That's all. And I don't do that.
Before we go, why don't you tell us about these numbers that you see? I'm seeing a lot of numbers myself.
Oh yeah. The numbers on my Bible study. Those numbers were numbers that they used to communicate they used those numbers combined with other forms of communication to present it as an artistic form of communication. You know how Fox News, well, you might not know, but Fox News has a program called News by the Numbers.
Oh, yeah. I haven't heard of it, but that's interesting.
Yeah, oh, yeah, they have a program called News by the Numbers. There's a lady.
It's funny because in the news, they're putting all these esoteric numbers in there, in the news stories. Go ahead.
Right, yeah, and so they use them in the news and News by the Numbers, and then they use the symbols and the words that are buzzwords. You've heard the term buzzword? Oh, yeah. Okay, then they use the buzzwords, the words that they know that me and them communicate with, like our own, little thing, and then they'll use the numbers, and then they'll use the maybe perhaps a song, the bumper music that they go to commercial to, and that they can put things together, and it's very artistic. It's like most people when most people will watch a movie, they'll see the movie, and like we talked about how you have to watch it sometimes a second time to get other meanings. Yeah. Well, they can do that with everything. They can do it with the commercial, and they can do it with, their programming, and they can do it anywhere. They can put more things into their broadcast or to their form of communication that mean things that are supposed to mean things to only somebody else. You know what I mean? And then they do it very well. So that's basically how they do it. And I can give you an example like 521. I'm not going to mention any news networks, man. I think I did that already, didn't I? So I'm not going to mention the reason, and this is why that it's hard to tell people how they persecute you, because you give them attention, and that's what they want, especially the media. When you say, okay, look, they're doing this, this, and this to me, people will turn their channel to that station to see. And when they turn their channel to that station to see, their ratings go up. And that's one of the things that they like to have happen. And that's why I say when in the form that they can persecute you can also reward them back when you go to tell other people. You know what I mean? Like when Jesus, he healed someone, he says, don't go tell anybody. In their case, they want everybody to know what they just did. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give them any more attention that they have. But who I will tell? I will tell a judge, man, and I will tell the Supreme Court. So if you can hook me up with a lawyer or you can hook me up with some sort of legal representation, this should be cut and dry. And of course it's going to be.
You're talking to the wrong guy.
Oh, I know. Well, I don't know that for sure, but I'm just saying, if you ever come across one in your chat or if you can just put the feelers out there, mm-hmm. Just let them know that, man, you got the guy who can make it all come true and stuff. It's just, that they oppress me. How else am I gonna get things done if I don't get freedom? Yeah.
I'm suffering from an affliction right now. I'm not my normal self. I usually will talk on here hour after hour, but I'm not sick, but I'm low energy, and I've got a bad throat, and I've been coughing a little bit lately. And I think I finally figured out what the problem is. I got a guy in the house that's spraying this diabolical Axe body spray, which they were comparing on Google to nerve gas. And I'm actually concerned about my praying mantis dying. Fortunately, I have a ozone machine. Okay. But I got to watch my energy level, so I got to go. Let me ask you one more. This is a trivial question for tonight.
Yeah.
You think there's a conspiracy with Frankenweed going on out there?
I don't know about.
The government legalizing this marijuana.
Yeah.
But pushing the synthetic stuff.
Oh.
See, I live up in here, Washington State. They've got. I only have to walk about. Let me see. About 7 minutes from where I live, and they have a place for selling this stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's like the synthetic stuff, huh?
And if the government is going to legalize something like that, they got to be doing it for the wrong reason, right?
I didn't think it was legal. I thought, didn't they have to not? Well, I don't know. I don't watch enough TV, and I don't keep up on those sorts of things. But I would say, you shouldn't really do anything to get you high. I think it's probably a good idea to stay away from all of it. And it's like even when I did smoke a little years ago, it was because I had asthma sometimes. And when I went out to ride my bike to work in the winter, my lungs were just, hard to open. So I would just take a puff like that. But now, you see people and they're doing it, a lot. And I think to myself, geez, I think it's best just to not do it at all. But if you cannot do it, I recommend not doing it at all. And then just stay away from it. Then you don't have to worry. And then if you can convince other people, look, it's not worth it, just stay off it. If that would be, I know that sounds corny and old-fashioned and everything, but, it's probably best just to go get yourself a natural high somewhere, like you were talking about how the nature's beautiful, and all that. And, you can really soak that up sometimes. I go out with
the
my
reason I
headphones.
asked is because we mentioned pot along the way. So I thought you might have an interesting view about it. I just want to let people know that Dave didn't ask that question because he's smoking pot.
Yeah,
I used to be a pothead, but I have not smoked pot since 1986. So there you go.
Good for you. Good for you. And then, we'll sign off, and thanks for letting me be on your show.
Yeah, it's good talking to you, Tom.
Yeah, hopefully this will lead to something. You never know. And
who knows?
And, exactly. I always hope for the best.
Okay.
And,
God bless you now.
Oh, well, thank you. And you have a good night, okay?
Yeah, you come back when you feel like it, okay?
We can listen to this podcast and see how weird I sound.
Now this podcast is going to be it's going to be hidden, and it's going to be moved to room 2.
Oh, okay. All right. Will it be open to the public or no?
It will be when I upload it and unhide it, but it may be a
okay.
little while before it shows up. But you can actually you can email me, and I could unhide it for you if you want to download it yourself.
Okay.
I don't know when I'm going to put it up.
Yeah, I'll get a hold of you, or you get a hold of me, but I'll get a hold of you and maybe just check in every once in a while to see how things are going.
Well, it will be public. There's a good chance I might put it in room 2 by tomorrow. So.
Oh yeah, no hurry. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let you go, Tom. It was nice talking to you. All right.
Talking to you too. Take care.
Take care of yourself. God bless now. Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.